Chapter 172. How is this possible? The 5 million troops of the Ming Yuan Empire were stunned. They watched the godlike imperial teacher get pierced by a finger. They almost thought that what they saw was an illusion. The imperial teacher is dead? How could the imperial teacher die? The emperor's hands and feet were cold, and he was terrified. Just a moment ago, he was still thinking about the surrender of all countries and the unification of the Ming Yuan Empire. But in the blink of an eye, the imperial teacher died. With the death of the imperial teacher, the Ming Yuan Empire lost its greatest reliance. Although the Ming Yuan Empire can still occupy the endless grasslands with its national strength, it will be a complete joke if it unifies the world. Many generals next to the emperor felt a chill in their hearts. They thought further than others. Now that the imperial teacher is dead, what should they do next? The 5 million troops of the Ming Yuan Empire can be said to be the power of the entire country. Once the expedition fails and they return to the empire, they will face the resentment of the people, and many generals looked at Su Qin, who killed the imperial teacher with a finger, and their scalps exploded. Whether they can return to the empire safely is a problem, let alone face the resentment of the people. Compared to the dead silence of the Ming Yuan Empire's army, the Empire of Tang cheered. Countless soldiers of the Empire of Tang were full of joy. They didn't know Su Qin. They only knew that Su Qin stepped into the sky and killed the imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire, saving countless people of the Empire of Tang. Long live the Empire of Tang! Long live His Majesty! The people of Chang'an City couldn't help but shout. Is that person the legend of the Imperial Palace? A girl with an elegant temperament looked at Su Qin with admiration. He looks about the same age as me. I don't know if he is married. The young lady lowered her head and spoke in a voice as soft as a mosquito. He. A martial artist next to her heard this and shook his head. How respected is a legend? How could he fall in love with someone like you? When the martial artist said this, he didn't continue. But the meaning of his words was equivalent to telling the other party that he wasn't worthy. You! The girl with an elegant temperament blushed, stomped her feet, and hurriedly ran away. When the others saw this scene, they looked at each other and smiled. They didn't think that there was anything wrong with the girl's thoughts, but whether they could do it or not was another matter. However, the strength of my Tang Empire's legend is terrifying. He should have already reached the depths of the myth realm. A martial artist of the upper realm sighed with emotion sighed. Indeed. The other martial artists nodded in agreement. And, since Su Qin could easily kill the imperial teacher, it was obvious that his strength was far above the latter. Legend is the emperor's emperor, the imperial emperor. The third brother killed the imperial teacher Su Qin? The emperor of Tang hadn't recovered from the scene of Su Qin stepping into the sky. But when he saw the imperial teacher die at the hands of Su Qin, his mind went blank again. After a long time, the emperor of Tang reluctantly reacted. He looked at the Forbidden Army commander next to him, and asked in a hoarse voice, What happened just now? Your Majesty. The Forbidden Army commander's face also flashed with shock, disbelief, and many other emotions. Finally, he took a deep breath and sighed. The imperial uncle killed the imperial teacher Su Qin. After the Forbidden Army commander said this, he calmed down and continued. Your Majesty, the imperial uncle is the legend in the imperial palace. When the Forbidden Army commander said this, images of Su Qin kept flashing in his mind. In the eyes of the Forbidden Army commander, Su Qin has some ability, and even the Emperor of Tang praised him. But all of this is nothing compared to the identity of a legend. So, I've actually met a martial arts legend so many times. The commander of the Imperial Guard looked very emotional. He commanded the Forbidden Army in the Imperial Palace and often patrolled. Occasionally, he would see Su Qin strolling around the Imperial Palace. I should have thought of it. I should have thought of it. I should have thought of it. The Emperor of Tang only felt a roar in his mind as he muttered to himself. In the past hundreds of years in the Empire of Tang, except for the great ancestor, no one has ever heard of anyone becoming a legend. The Emperor of Tang's imperial palace had a legend, which happened after Su Qin moved into the Eastern Palace. Moreover, every time the legend in the Imperial Palace took action, it was when the Emperor of Tang was facing a life-and-death crisis. Obviously, the legend only cared about the life of the Emperor of Tang. The Emperor of Tang's mind was full of thoughts as he stared blankly at Su Qin, who was standing alone in the depths of the Meng Yuan army. Little Qin, little Qin! The two brothers Su Shimin and Su Sungho looked at each other with blank faces, not knowing what happened. Meng Yuan army. Su Qin killed the imperial teacher Su Qin with a single finger without any change in his expression. Although the imperial teacher Su Qin was a legend, he should be invincible in his era, but unfortunately, he met Su Qin. Su Qin had already stepped into the seventh heavenly layer, and the gap between the imperial teacher and Su Qin was no different from an ordinary person challenging venerable Arhat. It could even be said that it was far more than that. If Su Qin had not just broken through and wanted to familiarize himself with his strength, he could have killed the imperial teacher Su Qin in Chang'an City from 10 miles away. At this moment, a violent shout came. "You killed my imperial teacher, and we will not rest until one of us is dead. Army, listen to my order. Whoever can injure this person will be rewarded with 100,000 gold taels and land. Whoever can kill this person will be given the title of king and will share the endless grassland with the emperor." This voice was low and powerful, and it instantly spread across a radius of several miles. Suddenly, there was a slight commotion in the Meng Yuan army's 5 million soldiers. There will always be brave men when there is a great reward. Even if these soldiers witnessed Su Qin killing the imperial teacher with their own eyes, since they joined the army, who doesn't want to make a name for themselves? At this moment, the general who had just issued the military order quickly came to the emperor's side and whispered, "Emperor, run!" Obviously, the general didn't think that 5 million troops could deal with Su Qin. The reason why he issued such a military order was nothing more than to sacrifice 5 million troops to buy time for the emperor. In his opinion, even if Su Qin was strong, it would take time to kill 5 million troops, right? If sacrificing 5 million troops could allow the emperor to escape, everything would be worth it. Escape? The emperor looked at the general, and a glimmer of hope suddenly appeared on his face. Yes, as long as I escape back to the grassland, there will still be a chance. The emperor's heart had just ignited with hope, and he subconsciously looked back, wanting to see the situation on the battlefield. However, when he looked back, he saw a scene that he would never forget. Chapter 173. The Meng Yuan Empire's Army. Su Qin glanced at the 5 million soldiers who were ready to move. He shook his head slightly and said, "They don't know what death is." The next moment, a faint flame appeared in the depths of Su Qin's pupils, as if the sun was hovering in the sky, suppressing the world. The terrifying flame gushed out from Su Qin's pupils. At first, it only burned a few hundred meters, but then it quickly spread. As long as the Meng Yuan Empire's army was touched by the flame, they would burn like grass and turn into a fireball. Finally, all the flames gathered and burned fiercely, converging into 9 great suns that spanned across the world. 9 young divine art, burning mountains and boiling seas. With Su Qin's current strength, even if he can't transform into a real great sun, it's easy for him to condense 9 fireballs that can burn everything. Walala, in an instant, the terrifying flame enveloped most of the battlefield. Countless Meng Yuan Empire soldiers couldn't even let out a scream before they were burned into nothingness. What is this? The emperor was shocked and furious. He just turned around and was about to run away, but such a change happened on the battlefield. The great sun covered the sky and completely burned the 5 million soldiers of the Meng Yuan Empire. No! The emperor turned around and wanted to run, but the flames spread too fast. It caught up to him in an instant. Suddenly, under the burning of the flame, the emperor's body turned into nothingness inch by inch, no longer existing. Before completely losing consciousness, the emperor suddenly regretted it. If he didn't mobilize the army to declare war on the Empire of Tang, would the result be different? Imperial teacher, you harmed me. The emperor of the Meng Yuan Empire suddenly disappeared and no longer existed. At this moment, the battlefield was gradually coming to an end. The 5 million Ming Yuan Empire's army couldn't even escape. They were all burned into nothingness by the flame. What kind of flame is this? On Chang'an City, many civil and military officials saw this scene and swallowed fiercely and said in a trembling voice. They thought that a legend is very strong. Even if they are besieged by millions of soldiers, they can easily kill their way through without running out of true essence or vitality. Killing was one thing, but burning 5 million soldiers into nothingness in just a few moments like this, what kind of concept was this? It's about time, Su Qin thought as he scanned the battlefield. In truth, the 9-yang divine art was indeed powerful, but even the creator of this divine art was far from being able to do what Yi Futian had just done. He was able to incinerate an army of 5 million with a single thought. This was Su Qin's terrifying strength. He had raised the 9-yang divine art to several levels in one fell swoop. What a pity! The power of a flame that covers this area has been greatly weakened. It can only be used against martial artists of the 9th grade. Su Qin shook his head slightly and evaluated in his heart. If the 9 great suns were to be condensed into a single point, all of their powers would have been concentrated in one place, and they would have been able to hurt a martial arts legend. But if they are scattered like now, there is no threat to legends, and even some grade 1 great grandmasters can resist for a while. Just now, in the Ming Yuan Empire's army, several peak grade 1 were barely able to resist the flames, but as the power of the flames gathered, they were slowly burned into nothingness. Time to go back. Su Qin glanced at the battlefield again and finally looked in the direction of Chang'an. He took a step forward and disappeared. The Ming Yuan dynasty was defeated. The imperial teacher died on the spot. No one from the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army survived. This news spread almost like a hurricane throughout the various countries. The Ming Yuan Empire's army of 5 million Ming Yuan Empire soldiers had already touched the heartstrings of the various countries in the world. Who knows how many spies were lying in ambush near Chang'an City, passing the information back to the various countries at any time. The Ming Yuan Empire was defeated? The imperial teacher is dead? The Song Emperor's expression was ugly. He looked at the scout who brought back the news with a roar. Is this true or false? Reporting back to your majesty, this matter has been repeatedly confirmed. It should be. The scout kneeling in the hall trembled as he bowed his head and said, It should be true. Plop! The Song Emperor seemed to have lost all his strength and collapsed on the dragon throne, his face full of despair. What happened? Why was the Ming Yuan Empire defeated so thoroughly? Yui frowned and immediately asked. In his opinion, even if the Ming Yuan Empire and the Empire of Tang won and lost, at most, one side repelled the other. But now, the Ming Yuan Empire was completely defeated, no one survived, and the Ming Yuan Empire's imperial teacher, a legend, died on the spot. This is ridiculous. No one from the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army survived? No one can do this. You have to know that when two armies fight, once one side shows an overwhelming advantage, the other side will inevitably be defeated and flee. In this case, how can the Empire of Tang stop the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army? Not to mention 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army, even if 5 million pigs scattered, it's impossible to stop them all, right? Great General. According to the information, it was the legend of the Empire of Tang who killed the imperial teacher with one finger, then summoned the 9 great suns to burn everything, and burned the 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army into nothingness. At this point, the scout's teeth were chattering. Even if he was not on the battlefield, he could guess how terrifying the flames that could burn 5 million Ming Yuan Empire army were. The legend of the Empire of Tang. Yui was silent. After a long time, he said bitterly, How could he be so strong? It wasn't just the Song Empire. At the same time, almost all countries in the world received the news. Nanming. Ming Emperor was sitting on the dragon throne with a blank look. Since the fall of King Wuiyang in Chang'an City, Nanming's foundation has been greatly damaged. After losing such a peak grade 1, Ming Emperor almost couldn't suppress the imperial court. Fortunately, in recent months, for some unknown reason, 2 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters in Nanming successfully broke through and entered peak Grade 1, which reignited Ming Emperor's ambition. However, before Ming Emperor could make a comeback, he heard bad news. In the war between the Empire of Tang and the Meng Yuan Empire, the Meng Yuan Empire was completely defeated. Not only did the imperial teacher, a legend, die in battle, but the Meng Yuan Empire's 5 million Ming Yuan army was also left outside Chang'an City. The Ming Emperor was happy to see such a huge loss in the Meng Yuan Empire. But after today, the shadow of the Empire of Tang will probably completely shroud the other countries. Martial arts legend. Ming Emperor was pessimistic. With the ability shown by the legend of the Empire of Tang, not to mention this era, even throughout ancient times, no one can be his opponent, right? Just when the countries in the world were shaken. Chang'an City. The Emperor of Tang was ordering the army to clean up the battlefield and ordered the army to recover the lost and abandoned territory. Just then, a eunuch walked quickly to the Emperor of Tang and whispered a few words. What? The Emperor of Tang's face changed slightly when he heard this. Chapter 174. The Emperor of Tang looked dignified. He immediately put down all the matters in his hands, looked at the eunuch in front of him, and said word by word. You mean, third brother wants me to go to Cunning Palace to find him? Reporting to your majesty, that's exactly what the imperial uncle said. I see. The Emperor of Tang thought for a while and waved his hand. Later, the Emperor of Tang called Su Shimin, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu to Cunning Palace. Along the way, whether it was Su Shimin, Su Sungho, or Su Qingyu, they were full of doubts. They felt like they were dreaming. Soon, they arrived in front of Cunning Palace. They saw Su Qin standing there quietly. He seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Third brother, the Emperor of Tang called out uneasily. Su Shimin, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu looked at Su Qin with a strange look in their eyes. Therefore, at this moment, Su Qin was not only their family, but also a peerless legend who killed the imperial teacher and burned 5 million troops. I know you have a lot of doubts. Su Qin turned around, looked at the Emperor of Tang and the others, and continued. But before we talk about those things, let's wake up my little sister first. Su Qin's tone was flat, as if he was an ordinary person. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would associate him with the peerless legend in the Meng Yuan Empire's army. Okay. The Emperor of Tang's eyes lit up. 2 years ago, Su Yuyun fell into a deep sleep in order to absorb a drop of Ewood's spirit liquid and hasn't woken up since. After a while, Su Qin and the others walked into the depths of Cunning Palace and looked at Su Yuyun lying on the bed. 2 years later, not only did Su Yuyun not change in the slightest, but under the nourishment of the drop of Ewood's spirit liquid in his body, he became younger and younger. It's about time. Su Qin glanced at him, raised his right hand, and pressed on Su Yuyun's forehead. 1. In less than an instant, Su Yuyun slowly opened his eyes and looked around blankly. Where is this? Am I not in the Imperial Garden? Su Yuyun blinked and looked at the Emperor of Tang, Su Shimin, and the others. Yuner. The Emperor of Tang was overjoyed. Su Shimin, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu were also overjoyed. After chatting for a while, they once again looked at Su Qin. Su Qin's expression was calm as he said indifferently, If you have any questions, you can ask now. The Emperor of Tang and the others looked at each other, but no one dared to be the first to speak. In the end, it was Su Sungho who bit the bullet and said, Just now outside Chang'an City, that person. As soon as Su Sungho said this, everyone, including the Emperor of Tang, pricked up their ears, wanting to hear Su Qin's answer. Although they were mostly sure in their hearts, they still wanted to hear Su Qin's final answer. I did it. Su Qin glanced at everyone and said calmly. Su Sungho heard this and said with his eyes wide open. So, you are a martial arts legend? Su Qin thought for a while and nodded. More or less. Whether it was Venerable Arhut or martial arts legend, they were all different names for martial artists of the same realm. The power was the same, but the name was different. Hearing Su Qin's admission, whether it was Emperor Li Xing or the 3 Su family members, they were all shocked. If they hadn't seen the scene on the battlefield with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it even if they were beaten to death. In their eyes, Su Qin, who had always been gentle, was actually a legend who suppressed an era. Little sister, why aren't you surprised at all? Su Sumho turned his gaze and saw Su Yuyan's thoughtful look, so he could not help but ask. In his opinion, his little sister, who had been asleep for so long, suddenly found out that her third brother was a martial arts legend. Although she was not shocked, it was impossible for her to be so calm. Actually, I have always felt that third brother was not an ordinary person. Su Yuyan thought for a while and said, What? The Emperor of Tang and family Su looked at each other in disbelief. Even the Emperor of Tang only realized all this after the fact. How could Su Yuyan have such foresight? Su Yuyan saw everyone's confusion and did not keep them in suspense. He said bluntly, When the 10 vassal lords were commanding millions of troops, I talked to third brother. At that time, third brother told me that nothing would happen. Then, the divine light that reached the sky killed the 10 vassal lords from thousands of miles away. Then why didn't you tell me? The Emperor of Tang sighed. At that time, I did not have a good rest for months. If the Emperor of Tang knew that his third brother was a martial arts legend at that time, how could he not be able to sleep? I was not sure at that time. Su Yuyan glared at the Emperor of Tang and continued. Later, I found that Wanner's strength improved too quickly. I am also a martial artist, and I know that Wanner's martial arts talent is indeed good, but it is impossible for her to improve by leaps and bounds. And Wanner is the one who runs to third brother the most. Su Yuyan continued. So I was sure that Wanner's change must have something to do with third brother. Wanner. The Emperor of Tang's face showed a trace of shame. Over the years, he had put most of his energy into national affairs and did not pay much attention to Li Wan. And finally, third brother made the peach blossoms bloom in the imperial garden in front of me. I am not a fool, Su Yuyan said in the end. So that's what the fragrance of the flowers that day was about. Su Sumho suddenly realized. Su Shimin and the others also came to a realization. At that time, they were also curious about the fragrance of the flowers. Su Qingyu was even prepared to ask Su Qin, but Su Shimin stopped him with the reason that Su Qin needed to rest. As for what happened after, everyone forgot about it and left it unsettled. That's right. Third brother, I actually have a question. At this time, Su Yuyan looked at Su Qin and could not help but ask. Go ahead, Su Qin said lightly. Decades ago, there was a rumor that the Shaolin Temple produced a venerable arhat. Su Yuyan paused for a moment, and continued. At that time, third brother, you were also in the Shaolin Temple. As soon as Su Yuyan said this, the rest of the people's faces changed slightly, and looked at Su Qin in disbelief. You want to ask, what does the venerable arhat of the Shaolin Temple have to do with me? Su Qin looked at Su Yuyan with a smile on his face. The venerable arhat of the Shaolin Temple is me. Su Qin pondered for a moment, and said slowly. Suddenly, Su Shimin and the rest of the family Su felt a huge wave of emotions in their hearts. They never thought that Su Qin already had the strength of the venerable arhat when he was in the Shaolin Temple. Next, Su Qin answered a few more questions. When everyone's doubts were completely resolved, Su Qin continued to speak. Since you all know, now I will give you a choice. Choice. The Emperor of Tang and the others' hearts skipped a beat. They immediately knew that what Su Qin was going to say next was probably very important. Thinking of this, everyone held their breath and pretended to listen attentively. Chapter 175. Inside the Cunning Palace. The family Su looked solemnly at Su Qin. Even the Emperor of Tang felt uneasy at this moment, because he didn't know what kind of choice Su Qin was talking about. Would it affect the Empire of Tang and the whole world? If Su Qin was still his third brother, the Emperor of Tang would naturally not have such thoughts, but at this moment, Su Qin is the legend of the martial arts era, venerable arhat. In front of such an existence, a casual thought can shake the world. 1. Maintain your current life. I can guarantee you safety and wealth, and you can live for at least 150 years. Su Qin looked at the crowd and said lightly, Live for more than 150 years? Su Shimin's eyes widened, full of disbelief. The two brothers next to him, Su Sung-ho and Su Qingyu, also had the same expression. One must know that in this world, only by entering the upper realm can a martial artist's shoyuan be slightly extended. Even a grade 1 great grandmaster can only live for more than 150 years. Although the limit of a grade 1 great grandmaster's shoyuan is 200 years, the limit of a shoyuan is the limit of a shoyuan. In fact, not many grade 1 great grandmasters can really live to the limit of a shoyuan. Most of the grade 1 great grandmasters' shoyuan are around 150 years old. And Su Qin can let them live for more than 150 years, which is equivalent to forcibly raising the limit of a shoyuan to the grade 1 great grandmaster level. Even the Emperor of Tang, the Emperor of the Empire of Tang, has never heard of such a method. At least Taizu, who established the Empire of Tang more than 500 years ago, was far from being able to do it. Third brother, is this true? The Emperor of Tang, Li Xing, asked with a trembling voice. The Emperor of Tang in the past did not live long, and Li Xing has long been prepared for this. Now that he suddenly heard that he can extend the limit of a shoyuan, and even live to 150 years old, how can he continue to be calm? Naturally, it's true. Su Qin nodded. With his current strength at the 7th heavenly layer, he can't guarantee that everyone can live for 200 years, but 150 years is a piece of cake. Su Shimin, Su Sung-ho and Su Qingyu had happy smiles on their faces. Who doesn't want to live longer and enjoy the glory of the world? Even for those true martial arts experts who devoted their entire lives to martial arts, most of them did so just so they could live a little longer. Only Su Yuyun looked at Su Qin and whispered, Third brother, what is the second choice? As Su Yuyun asked Su Lai, the Emperor of Tang, and the others suddenly woke up. Yes. Su Qin said, to give them a choice? Since there is a choice, there must be more than one. Thinking of this, everyone looked at Su Qin again. Yes. There is one more. Su Qin nodded slightly and said slowly, I can let you step into the path of martial Dao cultivation, at least to grade 1 great perfection. As for legend, I can only say that there is a glimmer of hope. When these words came out, the entire cunning palace was silent, and everyone looked at Su Qin in shock. At least grade 1 great perfection? Hope to become a legend? How is this possible? The Empire of Tang has been established for more than 500 years. Except for the founding father, let alone a legend, even a grade 1 great perfection has not been born. But at this moment, Su Qin is guaranteeing that they can become grade 1 great perfection, and even becoming a legend is not impossible. This was simply inconceivable. I am almost 70 years old, and my vitality has already begun to decline. Can I become grade 1? After a long time, Su Shimin said tremblingly. It is not that Su Shimin does not believe Su Qin, but Su Qin's words are too incredible. If it was before, of course, it would be impossible. But now, when Su Qin said this, a deep meaning flashed in the depths of his eyes. The world has changed. In martial Dao cultivation, if you want to become a truly powerful martial Dao cultivator, you must meditate from a young age, polish yourself day and night, train in the winter, train in the summer, and have a master to guide you. The cultivation technique must also be suitable for you. Finally, after spending decades, you may touch the threshold of the upper realm. But this is the limit of most martial Dao cultivators. To become a true upper realm martial Dao cultivator, opportunity, perception, aptitude, and talent are indispensable. This is also the reason why Su Qin did not guide the family Su's cultivation in the beginning. Because it is not worth it. Even if the family Su paid a huge price, gave up all enjoyment, and devoted all their energy to martial Dao cultivation, at most, they would only reach the upper realm. Maybe with the help of Su Qin, they would step into grade 1 great grandmaster. And then? They can only live for more than 100 years. In that case, why not choose the first option, give up martial Dao cultivation, and spend time on things they like, and then let Su Qin extend their Shouyuan for them and live happily for a lifetime. This was also Su Qin's initial idea. Instead of cultivating hard for a lifetime and living for more than 100 years, it is better to enjoy a lifetime and live for more than 100 years. But Su Qin's idea did not change until the recovery of the world's essence qi. The world's essence qi was like a tide, rising and falling. In this era, world's essence qi is in a state of slow recovery. With the recovery of world's essence qi, it is not only the world's essence qi that is gradually becoming richer, but the entire environment of heaven and earth has begun to slowly change, making it easier to cultivate. Of course, it is easier to cultivate compared to before, but it is undeniable that cultivating in this environment, whether it is the speed of cultivation or the breakthrough of bottlenecks, it will become much easier. For example, Su Qin, before the recovery of world's essence qi, it would take at least 40 to 50 years to smoothly enter the 7th heavenly layer, but now, it only took him 2 years to do it. However, Su Qin was able to break through so quickly, not only because of the recovery of world's essence qi, but also because he is the strongest person on this continent at the moment. As a result, under the recovery of world's essence qi, he has obtained the most benefits. Although others are far inferior to Su Qin, they can also obtain benefits. If the family Su re-enters the path of martial Dao under the recovery of world's essence qi, coupled with the guidance of Su Qin, a 7th heavenly layer legend, with the help of the changes of world, there is really a glimmer of hope to become a legend. Of course, this is only a glimmer of hope. Third brother, what do you mean when you say that world's essence qi has changed? Su Yuyun calmed down and looked nervously at Su Qin. The others also looked over and held their breaths. They are all smart people, and naturally realized the terrifying meaning behind Su Qin's words. In the past, they have no hope of martial Dao. But now they can. The reason for this is the world's essence qi has changed that Su Qin mentioned. And what kind of change can cause such an impact? Let's not talk about this for now. Su Qin shook his head slightly. The recovery of world's essence qi was too complicated to explain, and even if Su Qin explained it, whether the family Su can understand was another matter. Now tell me your choice. Su Qin's gaze swept across the crowd and said slowly. Chapter 176. Choose? Su Shimin and the rest of the family Su looked at each other and felt their heartbeat accelerate. They knew very well that the decision they made next would determine their lives. I choose cultivation. Su Shimin thought for a while and said seriously. Before the family Su became the imperial family, they were a martial arts family, and Su Shimin was the backbone of the family Su. It can be said that among the people present, Su Shimin's pursuit of martial arts was the most devout. I also want to cultivate. The two brothers Su Sung-ho and Su Qingyu also said in unison. What about you? Su Qin turned his gaze and looked at the Emperor of Tang and Su Yuyun. Third brother, can you wait for me for 20 years? I want to wait until everything in the Empire of Tang is settled and the throne is passed to Yuan or before I can cultivate. The Emperor of Tang was still worried about the Empire of Tang, and asked in a low voice. Yes. Su Qin nodded. 20 years later, the Emperor of Tang will be in his 60s. If it was someone else, they would have missed the age to cultivate martial arts, but for Su Qin, it is just a matter of a drop of Yiwood spirit liquid. Yiwood spirit liquid is powerful. Although it has no effect on Su Qin, in the eyes of ordinary people and even grade 1 great grandmasters, it is definitely a well-deserved holy medicine. Third brother, I want to accompany His Majesty. Su Yuyun looked at the Emperor of Tang and asked carefully. Okay. Su Qin, of course, has no objection. Unlike others, Su Yuyun has absorbed a drop of Yiwood spirit liquid early. Let alone 20 years, even 40 years is more than enough. Since you all choose to cultivate, then I will emphasize one more thing. Su Qin glanced at the crowd and continued. Even if the heavens and earth change, it will be extremely difficult for you to enter the legend realm. It can only be said that there is a glimmer of hope, But whether this hope can be realized or not depends on you, Su Qin said while shaking his head. After grade 1 great perfection, if you want to go further, you need to grasp a wisp of qi between the heavens and earth. Although the world's vitality recovery has increased the amount of qi, it still depends on luck to grasp it smoothly. I can help you. What Su Qin said is true. Before the recovery of vitality, only 1 out of 200 grade 1 great perfections could become a martial arts legend. Now, 1 out of 100 grade 1 great perfections will be a martial arts legend. It seems that the chances have doubled, but in fact, what is the concept of 100 grade 1 great perfection? One must know that before the imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire, no legend had been born for 200 years. Even the imperial dynasty's imperial teacher took the final step with the help of the vitality recovery. If there is no vitality recovery, the imperial teacher will be trapped in grade 1. After Su Qin finished speaking, he looked at the reaction of the family Su. It's not that he wants to hurt them, but he doesn't want to see the family Su full of hope only to face despair. Su Shimin and the others looked at each other. After hearing Su Qin's words, they quickly calmed down. They know how difficult it is to enter the legend realm. Even if they use the heavens and earth, coupled with Su Qin's help, it is estimated that their hope is slim. However, after discussing for a long time, they decided to go all out. There is no other way. Becoming a legend is too tempting. Not to mention other things, just the 500 years of Shouyuan is enough to make everyone desperate. Next, seeing that everyone has made up their minds, Su Qin began to teach them some cultivation techniques. These cultivation techniques were obtained by Su Qin in the past few decades. They are not divine secret arts, but they are definitely the most suitable cultivation techniques for the family Su. As for the real divine secret arts, even if Su Qin wants to teach them, the family Su can't learn it. For example, Su Qin is currently cultivating the past Amitabha Sutra. Even if he gave the original to the family Su on the spot, what can they do? Can they understand it? For thousands of years, no one has been able to learn the past Amitabha Sutra, let alone people outside Buddhism. Even Su Qin understood the past Amitabha Sutra because of the system's infusion. The stronger the cultivation technique is, the better it is. Okay. Come with me to a place. When Su Qin saw that everyone had calmed down, he spoke and turned to leave. Okay. The Emperor of Tang and the others immediately got up and followed behind Su Qin. Soon, Su Qin led everyone to the right spring square of the East Palace. Ask all the eunuchs and palace maids in the East Palace to leave. Su Qin stopped and looked at the Emperor of Tang and said. The Emperor of Tang heard this and immediately gave the order. Suddenly, except for the few of them, there was no one else in the East Palace. Third brother, isn't this your residence? Su Yuyan asked curiously. Residence? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He raised his right hand and pointed to the right spring square. Look again, is this still my residence? As soon as Su Qin's voice fell, the entire right spring square suddenly roared. Clouds and mist curled up and spread rapidly. In a short while, it enveloped the entire East Palace. Countless heaven and earth great arrays continued to overlap. Within the range of the great array, the aura was surging and vitality was like rain. It was like a paradise on earth. This is? Su Yuyan, Su Sungho, and Su Qingyu had never seen such an incredible scene. They all exclaimed. Even Su Shimin of the Lao Dao had a look of deep shock on his face. They did not expect that Su Qin, with a wave of his hand, would transform the Eastern Palace into a paradise on earth, as if a god of creation had changed the world. Heaven and Earth Great Array. This is the Heaven and Earth Great Array that the Great Ancestor mentioned. The Emperor of Tang was extremely shocked and muttered to himself. Before the Great Ancestor crossed the sea, he had left a Heaven and Earth Great Array in the Imperial Palace. But after 500 years, the Heaven and Earth Great Array had long disappeared. Moreover, according to the words left by the Great Ancestor, even if the Heaven and Earth Great Array in the Empire of Tang was still there, it was far inferior to the Heaven and Earth Great Array in the East Palace. If you want to cultivate in the future, you can come here. Su Qin smiled slightly. Ever since he discovered the majestic hall under Chang'an's city, Su Qin had basically ignored the right spring square. He would only come here for a stroll when he was free. Since that was the case, he might as well let the family Su use it. Not good. I should have the Forbidden Army stand guard outside. Otherwise, if someone else breaks in. At this moment, the Emperor of Tang's expression changed slightly. Don't worry. No one can come in without my permission, Su Qin said indifferently. The heaven and earth great array that he had set up in the right spring square was to prevent others from entering by mistake. Although he added other heaven and earth great arrays later, such as gathering world essence chi, the original heaven and earth great array still existed. With these heaven and earth great arrays guarding, even a martial arts legend would be trapped for a moment if they broke in, let alone others. Next, after Su Qin gave a few more instructions, the family Su happily followed Su Qin's instructions to cultivate. After everyone was busy, Su Qin's smile gradually faded. It's time to think about how to condense the miniature domain. Chapter 177. Cave World. The sky was dark. Su Qin was sitting cross-legged under a withered ancient tree. Next to Su Qin, Mohim was standing very obediently. Master, it is rumored that in the deepest part of the world, there is an ancient demon tree. It is this ancient demon tree that supports the entire world. The demon gods are sitting on the ancient demon tree. Mohim tried her best to tell everything she knew truthfully. Oh? Ancient demon tree? Su Qin raised his eyebrows and looked at Mohim. Yes, master. Mohim bit her lips and said charmingly. I also heard that in the demon cloud city, there is a branch of the ancient demon tree. If master is curious, you might as well go to the demon cloud city to take a look, is that so? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face, and a black light appeared in the depths of his pupils. Suddenly, Mohim's tender body trembled, and her pretty face became pale as paper. She knelt at Su Qin's feet with a plop. Master, I know I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Mohim's voice trembled, as if she was experiencing terrible torture. Tell me, what is your relationship with the Demon Cloud City? Why do you know so much about the Demon Cloud City? Su Qin looked at Mohim with a smile and said lightly. With Su Qin's perception, he naturally noticed that there was some kind of connection between Mohim and the Demon Cloud City. Compared with ordinary demons, Mohim knew too much. She even knew about the world's vitality tide. Master, I'll tell you everything. Mohim's pretty face flashed a trace of struggle, and then she immediately begged for mercy. Say it, Su Qin said casually. Master. Mohim's complexion recovered slightly, and she said respectfully. Master, the Demon Cloud City Lord is my granduncle. Granduncle? Su Qin was slightly surprised. He thought that Mohim had a grudge against the Demon Cloud City Lord. After all, Su Qin could feel Mohim's hatred for the City Lord hidden deep in his heart. Master, although the Demon Cloud City Master is my granduncle, I can't wait for him to die. When Emoji said this, she paused for a moment before continuing. I was born with a pure yin body. When my granduncle found out, not only did he imprison me, he even planned to give me to another demon king as a cultivation vessel. Furnace? Su Qin looked pensive. If Mohim really became another demon king's cauldron, his fate would be extremely miserable. If he was lucky, the pure yin qi in his body would be sucked dry, and his qi and blood would be destroyed. He would only last for a few dozen days before dying. If he was lucky, his soul would scatter on the spot. It can be said that the Demon Cloud City Lord giving Mohim to the other demon kings as a cultivation cauldron was equivalent to letting Mohim die, and an extremely miserable death at that. And then? Su Qin continued to ask. Then I escaped. But it didn't take long for me to be discovered. Then I was rescued by Master. Mohim did not dare to lie, and said with a trembling voice. She knew very well that apart from Su Qin, she had no one to rely on. Without Su Qin's protection, she would fall into the hands of the city lord sooner or later, and then be treated as a cultivation cauldron, like a commodity. Through this time of getting along, Mohim knew that although Su Qin was cold, he didn't seem to be interested in her, let alone treat her as a cultivation cauldron. After discovering this, Mohim immediately became determined to follow Su Qin. One must know that the purine chi in her body was very beneficial to king-level existences. Any demon king who discovers her will not let her go. It was simply a stroke of luck to meet Su Qin, a demon king who didn't care about her purine body. I see. You can leave now. Su Qin waved his hand and said. Yes. Mohim left obediently. Su Qin watched Mohim leave. He didn't think that she was lying just now. One must know that when Emoji spoke, her hatred for the city lord was real. Coupled with Su Qin's divine sense, he was even more certain that Mohim was telling the truth. In the past few years, I've visited all the nearby places where I can sign in. Only the Demon Cloud City is left. Su Qin touched his chin, his thoughts fluctuating. Even without Mohim, Su Qin would go to the Demon Cloud City. After all, the Demon Cloud City has existed for the longest time. In terms of Dao accumulation, the Demon Cloud City definitely has the most Dao accumulation. And the more Dao accumulation, the better the treasures Su Qin will get. However, before going to the Demon Cloud City, I should make a breakthrough first. Su Qin's expression slightly condensed. As early as when Su Qin's main body broke through to the 7th heavenly layer, this incarnation could also break through. After all, whether it was the main body or the incarnation, they were both Su Qin, sharing the same will and thoughts. Let's start. Su Qin slowly closed his eyes, and the aura in his body was circulating endlessly. A few days later, Emoji was bored to death as she swung on the swing, her snow-white long legs swinging back and forth. Master hasn't called me for several days. Mohim blinked her big eyes, constantly looking at the valley where Su Qin was. Unfortunately, at this moment, the valley was covered by a layer of demonic chi. Even if Mohim looked for 100 years, she wouldn't be able to see anything clearly. Master won't be angry, right? I really didn't mean to hide it from Master. Mohim's heart tightened, thinking that Su Qin blamed her for hiding her relationship with the Demon Cloud City from him. No. I must explain it to Master. Mohim jumped down from the swing and was about to run out of the valley to see Su Qin. However, at this moment, a faint voice came. What do you want to explain? Mohim looked up and saw a man standing there quietly. Master! Mohim exclaimed, looking at Su Qin in disbelief. At this moment, Su Qin gave Mohim a completely different feeling. It was like a real endless abyss, constantly devouring everything around him, and even Mohim's eyes couldn't escape. Master! You broke through? Mohim's pretty face was full of shock. Although Mohim was not a demon king, she had stayed in the Demon Cloud City for a long time. Although the city lord imprisoned her, he didn't mind telling her some things. Among them was the breakthrough of the Demon King level. Every step taken by a Demon King level existence was extremely difficult, and it took years or even decades for them to retreat. But Su Qin only went into retreat for a few days, and he broke through? Breakthrough? Sort of. Su Qin said casually. At this moment, he had completely entered the 7th heavenly layer. His aura was vast and mighty. Even in the cave world, he was definitely a powerhouse, a peak demon king who suppressed several major cities. Let's go. Su Qin looked up at the sky and said, Go? Master, where are we going? When Mohim heard this, she immediately followed Su Qin and asked in a low voice, Where are we going? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face, and he said lightly, Demon Cloud City. Chapter 178. Chang'an City. In a majestic underground palace, Su Qin sat cross-legged. His aura was deep and profound, as if the vast void encompassed everything. After stepping into the 7th heaven, my control of the power of heaven and earth has skyrocketed to 100 miles. Su Qin carefully felt his body and whispered to himself. At this moment, he could mobilize the vitality of heaven and earth within 100 miles with a thought. He was like a real immortal, representing the might of heaven. Although the power has increased a lot, I can feel that the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles is already the limit. In other words, the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles is the limit of Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend. Suchin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Compared to the true vastness of heaven and earth, the power of an individual was obviously insignificant. Even Venerable Arhat, a martial arts legend, was no exception. For any martial arts legend, Venerable Arhat, the range that he could wield with ease was 100 miles. Once it exceeded 100 miles, even a martial arts legend of the ninth heaven would not be able to do it. Of course, Suchin used the 9 Yao Bao to kill 10 vassals from thousands of miles away. It was the power of the 9 Yao Bao, and it was not his own control of the power of heaven and earth. No wonder after the 7th heaven, I have to start condensing the micro-domain. It turns out that my control of the power of heaven and earth has reached the limit. Suchin nodded slightly. Since he could no longer continue to expand the range of the power of heaven and earth, what should he do? Of course, it was to infinitely compress and condense the power of heaven and earth to form something similar to a domain. It is said that if a martial arts legend wants to go one step further and enter the realm of earth immortals, he has to constantly perfect the micro-domain and form a real domain. Suchin's thoughts fluctuated. A real earth immortal can envelop heaven and earth with a thought. Within the domain, the earth immortal is the only god omnipotent. Suchin was fascinated. However, if I want to condense the micro-domain, the first thing I have to do is to thoroughly familiarize myself with the power of the 7th heaven, and then use a lot of effort to slowly compress the power of heaven and earth. Finally, if I want to condense the power of heaven and earth to form the micro-domain, I will need to inject a lot of divine thoughts. Suchin sighed softly. Suchin didn't care much about his divine sense. After the moon forging divine sense art had forged it, his divine sense was extremely stable, completely meeting the requirements to form a miniature domain. But compressing heaven and earth power required Suchin to do it bit by bit. There was no shortcut. This was also the reason why many 7th celestial stage experts were unable to grasp a miniature domain. Condensing a miniature domain took too much time. Even a martial arts legend could only be a shoyuan for 500 years. If he were to spend a few hundred years to condense a micro-domain, how could he still cultivate? Let's give it a try. Suchin couldn't think of anything for the time being, so he could only try to compress the heaven and earth power. 1. Just as Suchin was slowly compressing the power of heaven and earth, the 1,000-year Bodhi heart that Suchin had been wearing suddenly emitted a faint brilliance. Under the glow of this misty light, Suchin's speed of compressing the natural power suddenly soared, reaching tens of times, even hundreds of times faster than normal. This is... Suchin suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the 1,000-year Bodhi heart in front of him. All this time, Suchin thought that the 1,000-year Bodhi heart's function was to see one's true nature, stabilize one's mind, and prevent one from going mad. But at this moment, when compressing the power of heaven and earth, the 1,000-year Bodhi heart actually had such a stimulating effect. According to the Buddhist scriptures, the 1,000-year Bodhi heart grows in the Buddha's pure land, and the Buddha's pure land should be similar to a domain. Suchin's thoughts raced as he thought silently. For a 7th heaven martial arts legend, what was condensed was a domain, but for a 7th heaven Venerable Arhat, what was condensed was a pure land. Although domain and pure land were called different names, they were essentially the same. At this speed, an ordinary martial arts legend would need at least 200 or 300 years to condense a domain, but for me, 2 or 3 years is enough. Suchin was amazed as he kept looking at the 1,000-year Bodhi heart in front of him. Not bad. Not bad! Suchin's face was full of joy. Although he had enough shoyuan, and even if it really took 200 or 300 years to condense a domain, if he could save time, why wouldn't he save time? In the following time, Suchin basically spent all his time condensing a miniature domain. With the help of the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, Suchin's path of condensing a miniature domain was simply 1,000 miles a day. On this day, Suchin had just finished a period of cultivation and left the majestic hall, ready to stroll around. martial arts cultivation was a step-by-step process. Unless he had a breakthrough, Su Qin generally wouldn't fall into seclusion for a long time. The vitality tide has risen a little again. Su Qin felt the heaven and earth, and his thoughts fluctuated. It just so happens that I haven't signed in today. Let's sign in at the palace today. When Su Qin passed by the white jade square, he suddenly stopped and made a decision in his heart. Ever since he sent his incarnation to the cave world, most of his daily sign-in opportunities were used in the cave world, but occasionally, Su Qin would sign in at the palace on a whim. System sign in. Su Qin stood in front of the white jade square and muttered in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have obtained the burning blood technique. Burning blood technique? All kinds of insights about the burning blood technique suddenly appeared in Su Qin's mind. So it's a desperate forbidden technique that burns one's own flesh and blood to obtain a substantial increase in strength. Su Qin's eyes lit up. The price of using the burning blood technique is to burn one's own flesh and blood. For any warrior, this was a heavy price to pay. But in Su Qin's eyes, it was no different from nothing. Because Su Qin has the flesh rebirth ability. With the blessing of this ability, even if Su Qin keeps using the burning blood technique, he can quickly recover, which is equivalent to not having to pay any price. Another trump card. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. At the same time, tens of thousands of miles away from the Tang dynasty, at the edge of the continent near the ocean, a figure in a blue robe stepped on the waves and came towards the continent at a terrifying speed. If the imperial teacher was still alive and was here, he would have noticed that this man in a blue robe had a mighty aura, indicating that he was a legend. And he wasn't even a legend who had just entered the first heavenly layer. Soon, the man in the blue robe approached the edge of the continent. Here, this is the place where the Tianji sect's Tianji child spent 100 years of Shuyuan's prophecy. The blue-robed man muttered to himself. The vitality tide is recovering, and the great world is coming. But in the great world, there are also those who are close and those who are distant. And the place of the great battle is the core of the vitality tide. In the land of the great era, there will be an earth immortal, or even an existence that surpasses the earth immortal. The man in the blue robe's heart was burning. Chapter 179. At the edge of the continent. A man in a blue robe had a fiery gaze. The overseas martial arts were unprecedentedly prosperous, but most of the cultivation resources were controlled by the major sections. Ordinary martial artists, even if they were at the mythical level, would be in a difficult situation if they did not choose to join a major sect and work hard for it. Those sect masters are unwilling to believe the prophecy of Tianji. They think that even if the vitality tide recovers, the overseas will still maintain its past glory. What a pity! The man in the blue robe shook his head slightly, and a trace of coldness appeared on his face. He once obtained an opportunity on a deserted island and knew that this was not the first time the vitality tide had appeared. As early as tens of thousands of years ago, the vitality tide had risen and fallen. And every time the vitality tide soared, a certain core area would appear. This core area would be above all other places in the world, and even the extremely prosperous overseas would be suppressed. However, those sect masters don't believe it, but for me, it saves me some trouble. A smile appeared on the face of the man in the blue robe. If the major sects overseas believed the prophecy of Tianji, he would have a headache. But now, no one cared about this continent, and in the eyes of the man in the blue robe, it was a great thing. As long as I occupy this continent in advance and start to make arrangements, even if it's only for a few years, the benefits will be better than decades or hundreds of years of hard work. The man in the blue robe's thoughts turned quickly, and he began to think about how to suppress this continent as soon as possible. If in decades or hundreds of years, this continent was completely full of vitality, he naturally would not dare to have such thoughts. But now, even if it was the core area of the recovery of vitality tide, it still needed time to accumulate and settle. Today's continent, even if it showed some extraordinary aspects, but in his eyes, it was just so. As an overseas mythical martial artist, the man in the blue robe naturally had his own pride. In this remote place far away from the overseas, a martial arts legend would not be born in hundreds of years. How could it resist his suppression? The only thing the man in the blue robe needed to consider now was how to suppress this continent as soon as possible. I have to hurry. In a short time, the major sects may not believe the prophecy of Tianjizi, but as time goes by, the vitality tide will become more and more intense, and those sect masters who stand at the top of the overseas will inevitably notice one or two. The man in the blue robe's heart suddenly tightened. He had never thought that he could monopolize this continent forever. Once those sect masters overseas reacted, the blue-robed man would have no choice but to retreat. Thinking of this, the blue-robed man took a step forward and disappeared. Meanwhile, Su Qin strolled leisurely in the palace. Su Qin stopped and looked into the ancestral shrine of the imperial palace. When Su Qin first arrived at the imperial palace, he knew that the guardian of the ancestral temple was a peak grade 1. He should be the last hidden treasure of the Emperor of Tang. Am I going to die? Su Qin's eyes were calm as his thoughts fluctuated. In his perception, the temple keeper's life force was like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any moment. Shou Yuan's time limit. Su Qin shook his head slightly. Even for a seventh heavenly venerable like Su Qin, Shou Yuan's time limit is an unavoidable problem. If Su Qin can't enter the great Arhat realm in the future, he can only live for more than 950 years, and then wait until his vitality declines and he dies of old age alone. It's a pity. Su Qin sighed softly in his heart. Now that the vitality tide is recovering, if the temple keeper still has a few decades of Shou Yuan, it is not impossible to try to take that step. But now, just as Su Qin was about to turn around and leave, squeak! The door of the ancestral temple was slowly pushed open. The temple keeper walked out of the ancestral temple with difficulty. The moment he saw Su Qin, his expression changed slightly, and then he respectfully said, "Greetings, sir." Although the temple keeper's vitality is declining at this moment, and he is close to Shou Yuan's time limit, as a peak grade 1 great Grand Master, unless he really dies of old age, it is impossible for him to be unable to move. What is your relationship with the founding father of the Empire of Tang? Su Qin stopped, looked at the temple keeper again, and asked casually. Although Su Qin has never seen the founding father of the Empire of Tang, he has obtained the jade pendant left by the founding father of the Empire of Tang to store his divine sense. In his divine sense, the aura of the founding father of the Empire of Tang is slightly similar to that of the temple keeper at this moment. Therefore, Su Qin asked this question. Sir? The founding father is the founder of my lineage, the temple keeper respectfully said. So that's how it is. Su Qin nodded slightly. In this way, everything made sense now. Sir? Before the founding father crossed the sea, he left a message that if a new legend is born in the Empire of Tang in the future, he must tell him some things truthfully. The temple keeper hesitated for a while and said in a low voice. Oh? Su Qin looked at the temple keeper and said lightly, Tell me, what is the founding father of the Empire of Tang referring to? Sir, the founding father once said that although there is a chance of longevity overseas, it is not a good place. Overseas is full of vitality and spiritual opportunity. It is a cultivation holy land for legends, but overseas is also occupied by the major sects and controls countless resources. The temple keeper said truthfully. I see. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Overseas is not a good place. Su Qin knew it when he met the beautiful figure in the palace dress when he was in Nanzhao and controlled moon worship. But Su Qin heard of the major sects for the first time. Sir, if you are going overseas, you must be careful. The temple keeper was silent for a while and continued. Hearing this, Su Qin just smiled and did not reply. For other legends in Venerable Arhat, overseas is the only place they can go. Only overseas can they find further opportunities. But in Su Qin's eyes, he never thought of going overseas. Not to mention that Su Qin found the entrance to the cave world under Chang'an City. Even if he didn't find it, the treasures he signed in at the imperial city were enough to promote Su Qin to the 9th heaven or even the great Arhat land immortal. In this case, why would Su Qin go overseas? At this time, the temple keeper bowed deeply to Su Qin again and said, "Sir, you have saved the Empire of Tang several times. If you have any needs in the future, just say it." Speaking of this, the temple keeper took out a dragon-shaped jade pendant from his arms and said, "This is the token left by the Founding Father. Anyone who sees this token is the same as seeing the Founding Father." The temple keeper respectfully presented the dragon-shaped jade pendant in front of Su Qin. "With this token, even if you depose the emperor, no one will dare to object." Su Qin glanced at the dragon-shaped jade pendant and said with a smile, "Aren't you afraid that I will use this token to sit on the throne of the Emperor of Tang?" "My lord, if you want the throne, you can take it," the temple keeper replied without hesitation. Chapter 180. The guardian of the ancestral temple died of old age that night. Although Su Qin did not see it with his own eyes, he saw the guardian slowly dying with his divine sense. In fact, this was not the first time Su Qin saw someone die of old age in front of him. But every time he saw it, it gave Su Qin a different feeling. Shou Yuan's limit. Su Qin sat cross-legged in the majestic underground hall, his heart filled with emotions. I wonder what level of martial artist is able to escape from the end of their lifespan. Immortality? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he thought silently. No matter what, I still have to become stronger. If I don't become stronger, I'll just live a little longer than ordinary people. Su Qin's expression turned solemn as he slowly closed his eyes, condensed the power of heaven and earth, and slowly transformed it into the micro-domain. Although for 7th heaven Arhat, condensing the micro-domain was not necessary. But for 9th heaven Arhat to go one step further and enter the realm of greater Arhat, he must transform the micro-domain into a full-fledged domain. Su Qin was currently focusing all his energy on the micro-domain. Firstly, it would be a qualitative change in his combat strength after condensing the micro-domain. Secondly, it was to pave the way for the future. Other mythical martial artists, no matter how talented they were, would not think that they would be able to ascend to the extreme and become an earth immortal. But Su Qin was different. For Su Qin, stepping into the earth immortal was just a matter of time. In the following time, Su Qin returned to his usual life. In fact, ever since Su Qin revealed his strength, there was no difference from before. The only difference was that Su Qin would occasionally take a look at the cultivation progress of the family Su people. What surprised Su Qin was that among the 3 family Su people, the fastest was not the brothers Su Sungho and Su Qingyu, who were at the peak of their vitality, but Su Shimin, whose vitality had begun to decline. Father has lived for most of his life, and his state of mind is not bad. That's why he was able to advance by leaps and bounds under the recovery of vitality, Su Qin secretly observed and judged in his heart. As for the 2 brothers, Su Sungho and Su Qingyu, they had their hearts set on the secular world. Even though they had the martial arts resources provided by Su Qin, they still had no choice but to devote themselves to cultivation. Of course, whether it was Su Shimin or Su Sungho or Su Qingyu, the reason why they could make such great progress was entirely because of the cultivation method provided by Su Qin and the fact that they cultivated under the heaven and earth great formation in the right spring square. In addition to family Su, Su Qin would occasionally give Li Wan some pointers. Third uncle. Li Wan stood there with a solemn expression on his face. How is your sword cultivation going? Su Qin casually glanced at Li Wan and said lightly. Since the last time Li Wan said that he wanted to cultivate the sword, Su Qin had divided a trace of his understanding of the sword into a sword mark and placed it on a piece of wood. It was not that Su Qin was unwilling to pass on more of his understanding of the sword to Li Wan. It was that the other party couldn't bear it at all. Sword Dao was about killing. Although the trace of understanding of the sword had been purified by Su Qin and the killing intent had long been removed, Li Wan was only a martial artist in the lower realm. Even if his martial arts aptitude was good, how could he bear the understanding of the sword of Venerable Arhat? Third uncle. I seem to have learned a little, Li Wan said cautiously. Oh? Give it a try. Su Qin looked at Li Wan and said, Yes. Li Wan nodded. She took out a wooden sword and slashed out according to the feeling she had in her heart. 1. A ray of sword light appeared and flashed, disappearing into the sky. Not bad. Su Qin saw this and nodded slightly. Although the ray of sword light that Li Wan slashed out was still not worth mentioning in his opinion, Li Wan was just a teenager. If this sword light was placed in Jianghu, it would be enough to make 90% of the swordsmen feel ashamed. With your current understanding of the sword, you can become a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in 20 years. Su Qin commented. In the past, with Li Wan's martial arts aptitude, although stepping into Grade 1 Great Grandmaster was not a problem, it would take at least 30 years. But now, it was 10 years ahead of schedule. Third uncle. Can I really become a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster? Li Wan was full of longing. In Li Wan's view, Grade 1 Great Grandmaster was too far away from her. The particularly fierce eunuchs in the palace were only at this realm. If you want to protect the Empire of Tang, becoming a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is not enough, Su Qin said with a deep meaning. What? Li Wan's little face suddenly became bitter. Then how strong should I be to protect the Empire of Tang? After a while, Li Wan asked tentatively. A legend. Su Qin gave a reply. Now that the vitality tide has recovered, cultivation has become easier. In the past, a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster could guard a country, but this should not happen again in the future. A peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster may still be strong, but it is absolutely impossible for them to suppress everything. A martial arts legend. Li Wan's little face was full of disappointment. If it was a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, she could still look forward to it, but a legend. At this time, Li Wan was no longer the little martial artist who had just entered the martial Dao. Although she doesn't know much about the legendary legend, she knows the difficulty of it. Don't worry, with me here I can't guarantee that you will become a legend, but at least you have more hope than others. Su Qin saw that Li Wan was full of disappointment, and said casually, Third uncle, is what you said true? Li Wan blinked her big eyes. Su Qin smiled and did not reply. Instead, he took out an envelope again. This is the cultivation method you will be cultivating next. 9 Yin Taoist scripture? Li Wan took the paper and read the words on it. Yes. Cultivating the 9 Yin Taoist scripture to great accomplishment will allow you to reach Grade 1 Great Perfection, which is enough for you to cultivate for the next 100 years. Su Qin nodded. Although Li Wan is expected to become a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster in 20 years, even if everything goes well, it will be 100 years before she is ready to break through to the legend realm. And this is with the influence of the recovery of the world's essence Qi tide. Otherwise, without the world's essence Qi tide, Li Wan will not be able to grasp the world's essence Qi for the rest of her life, let alone break through to the legend realm. Okay. Let's go back. Su Qin talked to Li Wan about the key points of cultivating the 9 Yin Taoist scripture, and let Li Wan go back and slowly ponder it. Su Qin can certainly play a guiding role in martial Dao cultivation, but it depends more on the martial artists themselves. I hope a few of you can become legends. After Li Wan left, Su Qin's expression became indifferent and calm again. Just as Su Qin was about to return to the underground palace under Chang'an City to continue condensing the miniature domain. Huh! Su Qin seemed to suddenly feel something, and his eyes narrowed slightly as he looked in a certain direction. Chapter 181. Another martial arts legend has been born. Su Qin's eyes were deep, as if there was an inexplicable vortex slowly rotating, illuminating the 9 heavens and the netherworld. At this moment, Su Qin was already Arhat's 7th heaven. With the eye of truth and the celestial divination technique, he could see through the Empire of Tang at a glance. As for the outside of the Empire of Tang, although it was beyond Su Qin's control, he could vaguely sense it. And just now, Su Qin vaguely noticed that a trace of a martial arts legend's aura suddenly flashed and disappeared at the edge of the continent. That's not right. The aura is stable. It's not a new martial arts legend. It should be a martial arts legend who returned from overseas. Su Qin carefully sensed for a moment, and thought to himself. Overseas? Su Qin's brows furrowed slightly, but then relaxed. Even if the overseas martial arts legend really returned, Su Qin would be too lazy to intervene if he did his job and hid in a corner. But if the other party wanted to cause havoc in the world, or simply provoke Su Qin had no choice but to kill them. At the same time, in the Longevity Hall, Emperor Li Xing sat on the dragon throne, looked at the Minister of Rights below, and said, "If you have something to say, say it. As you wish." The Minister of Rights bowed and said, "Your Majesty, now many small countries have submitted letters of surrender, but..." At this point, the Minister of Rights stopped and did not dare to continue. Ever since Su Qin killed the Ming Yuan Empire's imperial teacher outside Chang'an City and burned the 5 million troops, the world was shaken and the countries were terrified. As a result, during this period of time, small countries have successively submitted letters of surrender. This naturally made the Emperor of Tang overjoyed. "But what?" the Emperor of Tang asked. The Minister of Rights said cautiously, "But the 6 countries, Nanming, Northern Song, and Tibet, have put forward conditions." "What conditions?" Emperor Li Xing was not surprised when he heard this and asked. Among all the countries, only these 6 countries could truly be called great countries. In addition, the Empire of Tang in the past. The 7 nations stood side by side, facing each other, and together, they divided more than half of the world's territory. As for the other small countries, they might disappear after a while. The Emperor of Tang didn't care about them at all. The 6 countries did not submit letters of surrender like the other small countries. Instead, they proposed conditions. This was also within the Emperor of Tang's expectations. After all, as the monarch of a large country, even if he surrendered, he still needed the Emperor of Tang to appease him. As for the Emperor of Tang, as long as the 6 monarchs obediently surrendered and did not obstruct him, the Emperor of Tang would agree to most of the conditions. The 6 kingdoms want a promise. Even if the Empire of Tang rules the world in the future, the descendants of the 6 kingdoms will be able to enjoy wealth forever. If the descendants of the 6 nations are in trouble, I hope that the Empire of Tang can help them." The Minister of Rights cupped his hands and said, "And I was wondering what the conditions were." Hearing this, the Emperor of Tang smiled. "Enjoy wealth forever? Help them? I've already agreed. If the Empire of Tang really ruled the world, it would be too easy to raise the descendants of the 6 nations. As for the difficulties, as long as the Empire of Tang spoke, who would dare to make things difficult for the descendants of the 6 nations? Your Majesty." The Minister of Rights braced himself and said, "The promise that the 6 nations want is not your Majesty's promise, not my promise?" The Emperor of Tang frowned, not knowing what the Minister of Rights was talking about. The Minister of Rights calmed himself down and continued, "The promise that the 6 nations want is the Imperial Uncle's promise." When the Minister of Rights said the words Imperial Uncle, his voice trembled as if he was in awe of something. "They want the 3rd brother's promise?" The Emperor of Tang suddenly stood up and paced back and forth. After a while, a sneer appeared on Emperor Li Xing's face. "These 6 countries have a good plan." In a flash, the Emperor of Tang understood the 6 nations' plan. Simply put, the kings of the 6 nations did not believe in the Emperor of Tang's promise. As kings, they knew each other's thoughts too well. Perhaps the Emperor of Tang had promised today that after he truly controlled the territories of the 6 nations, he would find a random reason to kill the descendants of the 6 nations. But if this promise was given by Su Qin, then it would be different. No matter who became the Emperor of Tang in the future, as long as Su Qin was still alive, the Emperor of Tang would not dare to go against Su Qin. One sentence from Su Qin was enough to let the descendants of the 6 nations live a comfortable life for the next few hundred years without having to worry about any danger. "I understand." The Emperor of Tang thought for a while and sat back on the throne. "You may leave." "As you wish." The Minister of Rights bowed. After the Minister of Rights left, the Emperor of Tang went to the Eastern Palace alone. The Emperor of Tang had just entered the Eastern Palace when he felt warm all over. He felt even more comfortable after taking a deep breath. Third brother's methods are truly unfathomable. The Emperor of Tang's face was filled with emotion. He had lived in the Eastern Palace for a few years and naturally knew what the Eastern Palace was like. But under Su Qin's methods, the originally featureless Eastern Palace was transformed into a paradise on earth. It was simply inconceivable. When Yuan ascends the throne, I want to live here with Yuan all year round. The Emperor of Tang made up his mind. If he was not worried about the Empire of Tang, he would have stayed in the Eastern Palace all day long. Because some time ago, the Emperor of Tang discovered that Su Shimin, who had begun to age, had grown black hair again. Soon, the Emperor of Tang stopped in front of the Right Spring Square. Now, the heaven and earth formation in the Right Spring Square had spread to cover the entire Eastern Palace. The family Su had found a place to cultivate in the Eastern Palace. As for the Right Spring Square, as Su Qin's former residence, no one dared to treat this place as their own. Third brother. The Emperor of Tang cupped his hands at the Right Spring Square and said in a low voice. The next moment, a faint voice sounded. You're looking for me? Su Qin had appeared beside him at some point and looked at the Emperor of Tang. Third brother. Emperor Li Xing's spirit shook, and he immediately stated the conditions of the 6 countries truthfully. You want my promise? Su Qin laughed. It seems that the 6 nations still don't know what their situation is. Su Qin did not expect that the 6 nations would be so courageous as to make conditions to a martial arts legend. Third brother, what should we do now? The Emperor of Tang asked. Should I summon the army and attack the 6 nations? No need to go through so much trouble. Su Qin shook his head. With a thought, 6 tokens flew out of the Right Spring Square. Send people to the 6 nations and give them 2 choices. Su Qin paused for a moment and continued. Submit or die. Submit or die. Or die. The Emperor of Tang heard this and felt his heart tremble. Third brother, will the 6 nations agree? The Emperor of Tang asked in a worried tone. If the 6 nations did not take the initiative to cooperate, it would take at least decades for the Empire of Tang to unify the world. Agree? Su Qin handed the 6 tokens to the Emperor of Tang and said, If they don't agree, just take out the tokens. Yes. The Emperor of Tang took the tokens. The 6 tokens added up to less than half a pound, but they seemed to weigh more than 1,000 pounds in his hand. Chapter 182. Inside the Longevity Temple. The Emperor of Tang kept looking at the 6 tokens in front of him. These 6 tokens were very ordinary, and the texture was very rough. He couldn't see anything unusual about them. If it weren't for the fact that Su Qin had personally given them to him, the Emperor of Tang would never have looked at them. Third brother said that if the 6 states don't agree to submit, take out the tokens. But why don't I see anything different about these 6 tokens? The Emperor of Tang looked at them for a long time and didn't find anything, so he stopped looking. The Emperor of Tang had absolute trust in Su Qin. Since Su Qin said so, there must be a reason for it. Come! The Emperor of Tang pondered for a while and said, Your Majesty. Eunuch Lu bowed and walked in. You and the other 5 take these 6 tokens and go to the 6 states. Give them 2 choices. The Emperor of Tang said in a deep voice. 2 choices? Eunuch Lu raised his head and looked at the Emperor of Tang in confusion. That's right. Submit or die. If the 6 states don't agree, take out the tokens. The Emperor of Tang repeated Su Qin's words without missing a word. As you wish. Eunuch Lu's heart was heavy. Although he didn't know why the Emperor of Tang's attitude was so tough that he didn't even bother to talk about conditions and directly showed them 2 choices. In fact, in Eunuch Lu's view, these 2 choices were not so much persuading the 6 states to surrender, but angering them. But as a subject, of course he couldn't refuse the decree. Soon, Eunuch Lu called the other 5 eunuchs. Eunuch Lu glanced at the 5 eunuchs and said, Now you all understand what His Majesty means. In this trip to the 6 states, our lives are a small matter, but the dignity of the Empire of Tang is a big matter. No matter how the 6 states force us, we can't back down. Eunuch Lu said word by word. On this trip to the 6 nations, Eunuch Lu was already prepared to face death with equanimity. Although he is a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, if he goes deep into the imperial palace of the 6 countries and has a tough attitude, he will definitely anger the 6 countries. Although the 6 countries do not dare to fight against the Empire of Tang, in order to vent their anger, it is not a problem for them to attack a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. The other 5 eunuchs looked at each other with heavy hearts. However, even at this time, they did not think of refusing. As eunuchs in the palace, their life and death depended on His Majesty. If His Majesty wanted them to live, they would live. If His Majesty wanted them to die, none of them would dare to live. Right. Everyone will be given a token. If the 6 nations refuse, then take it out. Eunuch Lu followed His Majesty's instructions and handed the tokens to the 5 eunuchs. Finally, he also took a token and left the palace, heading to the 6 states. Nanming. The Imperial Palace. Ming Emperor sat on the dragon throne, his expression uncertain. Do you think that person in Chang'an City will agree to my conditions? Ming Emperor frowned and thought for a while, and then said, Your Majesty. It's just a promise. My Nanming dominates the southeast. If Your Majesty does not intend to surrender, it will take at least 20 years for the Empire of Tang to pacify Nanming. A promise in exchange for 20 years of the Empire of Tang. How can they not agree? The commander of the Bright Gown Guards said respectfully. That's right. Ming Emperor nodded slightly. What he wanted was just a promise from the person in Chang'an City. It was not excessive at all. The Empire of Tang had no reason to refuse. At this time, a minister couldn't help but ask, What if the other party doesn't agree? When this came out, the Great Hall suddenly quieted down. Even Ming Emperor's expression became gloomy in an instant. Don't agree? I've already made enough concessions. Ming Emperor glanced around. If the Empire of Tang really doesn't agree, I'd rather fight to the death. At worst, I'll escape overseas and not stay on the mainland. There are countless overseas islands. With my navigation skills in Nanming, I can conquer some islands and then establish my own country. What's so difficult about that? Ming Emperor's words were full of strong dominance. Nanming was close to the sea and often sent ships to explore the sea. Naturally, he had some understanding of the situation overseas. But in Ming Emperor's view, even if the Empire of Tang had a martial arts legend, Nanming was not without a way out. In the worst-case scenario, they would abandon the southern Ming dynasty's territory and flee overseas. Of course, if he had a choice, Ming Emperor would not choose this path. After all, life overseas was not as pleasant as life on the mainland. At this time, an imperial guard hurried into the Great Hall, stopped by Ming Emperor's ear, and whispered a few words. A smile appeared on Ming Emperor's face. He looked at the other officials in the Great Hall and said, The envoy of the Empire of Tang is here. When the officials heard this, their eyes suddenly lit up. The Empire of Tang probably sent an envoy to Nanming at this time for this matter. Let him in, Ming Emperor said lightly. A moment later, Eunuch Lu walked into the Great Hall. Ming Emperor. Eunuch Lu cupped his hands slightly to Ming Emperor. It was neither too respectful nor impolite. What's the Emperor of Tang's reply? Ming Emperor was too lazy to talk nonsense and asked bluntly. His Majesty told me. Eunuch Lu straightened his back and looked at Ming Emperor. Oh? Ming Emperor looked at Eunuch Lu with interest. The rest of the officials also pricked up their ears and listened attentively. Either submit. Eunuch Lu looked around and said, or die. As soon as Eunuch Lu finished speaking, the whole Great Hall fell into a dead silence. A terrifying pressure slowly enveloped the whole Great Hall. After a long time, Ming Emperor slowly got up, looked down at Eunuch Lu, and said word by word, Good! Very good! I didn't expect that the Emperor of Tang would dare to look down on me like this. Emperor Ming was infuriated. If the Emperor of Tang had refused him in a more tactful way, he would not have been so angry. Since the Emperor of Tang doesn't know what's good for him, I don't have to care about his feelings. Ming Emperor squeezed a few words from between his teeth. Take all the gold and silver in the country, empty the national treasury, and go overseas with me. Once Ming Emperor took away all the gold and silver in Nanming, it would inevitably cause chaos among the people. But at this moment, Ming Emperor could not care about this. As for you? Ming Emperor looked coldly at Eunuch Lu and said, Guards, take him down and kill him. As soon as Ming Emperor's voice fell. Vaguely, several figures approached Eunuch Lu without making a sound. The aura of these figures is far beyond Grade 1. Obviously, they are all peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. Since the recovery of the Vitality Tide, not only have several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters been born in the Emperor of Tang's palace, but a large number of powerhouses have also been born in various countries. You! Eunuch Lu's face turned pale. He only has Grade 1 strength. How can he stop several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters? Just as Eunuch Lu was about to fight to the death, he suddenly thought of the token on his body. The Emperor of Tang asked him to take out the token after Nanming refused, and now, it is obviously the time. Although Eunuch Lu did not know how an ordinary token could block so many powerhouses of Nanming, Eunuch Lu still did as the Emperor of Tang said. The next moment, Eunuch Lu took out the token, as if holding the most precious treasure, and raised it above his head. You're acting recklessly. Do you think a mere token can save your life? A trace of sarcasm appeared on Ming Emperor's face. He wanted to see Eunuch Lu get smashed into meat paste under the hands of several peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of Nanming. Wang! The token in Eunuch Lu's hand suddenly burst out with light, like a divine sun in the sky, bright and blazing, illuminating the entire Nanming Imperial Palace. At that moment, the whole world seemed to stop. In everyone's eyes, they vaguely saw an incomparably tall figure slowly raising his head, as if he was looking at them from a distance. This is... Ming Emperor only felt his hands and feet go cold, as if he had fallen into an abyss. Chapter 183. Nanming Imperial Palace. The Imperial Palace was majestic. Many Imperial guards were patrolling back and forth with sharp eyes. The person who just went in to see His Majesty should be the envoy of the Empire of Tang, right? An Imperial guard lowered his voice and asked cautiously. Apart from the envoy of the Empire of Tang, who else can see His Majesty at this time? Another Imperial guard next to him glanced around and replied casually. So that's how it is. The Imperial guard who had just spoken nodded slightly. Suddenly, he thought of something and said with a worried tone, I think that the envoy of the Empire of Tang is hiding his aura. He is obviously a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. If we let him go in to see His Majesty, what if he has evil intentions and wants to assassinate His Majesty? Assassinate? Another Imperial guard's mouth cracked open, revealing a smile. You don't know His Majesty's means. Now, His Majesty has many powerhouses around him. There are even more than one peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. If a mere Grade 1 Great Grandmaster wants to assassinate His Majesty, it is tantamount to a fool's dream. The guard's expression was resolute, and he was absolutely certain. The Empire of Tang has a legend, but it is impossible for them to attack His Majesty from tens of thousands of miles away. My Nanming dominates the southeast and has millions of soldiers. How can the Empire of Tang bully us at will? The guard's face was filled with arrogance as he spoke word by word. The Imperial Guard who spoke first was shocked and felt that Nanming was indeed so. However, at this moment, a terrifying pressure came from the Great Hall and instantly enveloped the entire Nanming Imperial Palace. Under this pressure, all the Imperial Guards, palace maids and eunuchs knelt on the ground as if they were facing heaven's might. This is... The two Imperial Guards who were talking to each other were shocked. They looked at the hall where Emperor Ming was in disbelief. Inside the Great Hall, Ming Emperor, who originally looked at Eunuch Lu as if he was looking at a dead man, looked as if he had seen a ghost at this moment. The other civil and military officials also saw an unforgettable scene in their lives. The token held high by Eunuch Lu suddenly shone brightly. Amidst the endless light, a figure sitting cross-legged looked at them from an endless distance away. Boom! A monstrous pressure shrouded the imperial palace. From Ming Emperor to the civil and military officials, all knelt down, as if they could not bear even the gaze of this figure. You are? Emperor Ming was dumbstruck. He stammered, unable to speak. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the token in Eunuch Lu's hand would be so resplendent and dazzling. Is it the legend of the Tang Empire? In the blink of an eye, Emperor Ming guessed something and his heart trembled. Is this a legend, martial expert? Several peak grade 1 great grandmasters next to the Ming Emperor knelt and bowed their heads, not even daring to raise their heads. Originally, with the help of the recovery of the vitality tide, he stepped into the realm of peak grade 1 great grandmaster and thought that he was already standing at the top of the world. Even if he was still far inferior to a legend, he could at least look up a little. But now, let alone looking up at the legend of the Empire of Tang, they can't even bear the other party's shadow that is tens of thousands of miles away. The gap is too big. It's so big that an ant wants to look up at the vast sky. Compared with the shock and fear of the other people in the Great Hall, Eunuch Lu was completely dumbfounded. It's the Imperial Uncle. Eunuch Lu was overjoyed, and immediately bowed deeply towards the shadow and the endless light emerging from the token. At this moment, the token no longer needed Eunuch Lu to hold it. It floated in the air by itself. You dare to refuse? Su Qin slowly walked out of the endless light. This was just a wisp of divine sense he placed on the token. Although its power is far inferior to his real body, it has no problem suppressing the Nanming Imperial Palace. Since you refuse, then go to hell. Su Qin looked at Ming Emperor and slowly raised his right hand. At this moment, Ming Emperor only felt that his whole body was trembling to the extreme. The endless light in front of him gave him an unprecedented pressure. This was not the pressure of the level of power, but a kind of pressure of the essence of life. Ming Emperor immediately knew that if he continued to remain silent, he would probably never have to speak again. Your Excellency, I have something to say. Ming Emperor took a deep breath and shouted. Since Your Excellency has taken action, you must be very willing to see the Empire of Tang unify the world. But the world is vast. Even with a legend like Your Excellency, it will take at least decades for the Empire of Tang to unify the world. Su Qin stopped pressing his right hand and looked at Ming Emperor with interest. Seeing this, Ming Emperor was slightly happy and immediately continued. But if I live, I can help the Empire of Tang. At least, it won't take long for the Empire of Tang to unify the Ming Kingdom. Ming Emperor spoke very quickly, fearing that Su Qin would slap him. The Ming Kingdom dominated the southeast, and the situation in its territory was complicated. If it were not for Ming Emperor's suppression, it would have been in chaos. Therefore, if Ming Emperor was willing to take the initiative to sort out many forces for the Empire of Tang, it would definitely be of great help to the Empire of Tang in conquering Nanming. This was also why Ming Emperor dared to put forward the conditions when he knew that the Empire of Tang had a martial arts legend like Su Qin. Because Ming Emperor had enough value. Is that so? Su Qin's eyes were calm, and he said lightly, Unfortunately, you think too highly of yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor Ming's body suddenly trembled, and then he turned into powder and disappeared. Surrender or die. Choose for yourself. After killing Ming Emperor with a thought, Su Qin looked at the others in the hall. After leaving these words, his figure disappeared, and the endless light suddenly converged into the token. We surrender. I'm willing to submit. Your Excellency, don't kill me. All the officials were scared out of their wits. They knelt on the ground and cried to Eunuch Lu, or to be precise, to the token in Eunuch Lu's hand. Even ants would drag out their lives, let alone these officials who enjoyed high positions. After witnessing Ming Emperor turn into nothingness, these officials did not dare to think of resisting. Perhaps there were some loyal officials, but now the general situation was gone. If they dared to continue resisting, the outcome would not only be Ming Emperor turned into powder, but also the entire Nanming royal family. One day later, the new Emperor of Nanming ascended the throne and immediately submitted a letter of surrender to the Empire of Tang. He was willing to submit to the rule of the Empire of Tang forever. At the same time, the other 6 countries, including the northern Song and Tubo, submitted their letters of surrender almost at the same time, and did not dare to make any more conditions. Under the suppression of absolute power, neither Ming Emperor nor the other kings dared to resist at all. As for the confidence they had in the value they showed, it was not worth mentioning. If they did not surrender, they would choose someone who was willing to surrender to be the emperor. The royal families of the 6 countries had many children, and there would always be some who did not have a backbone. Chapter 184. The Emperor of Tang's Palace. Inside the Long Life Temple. The Emperor of Tang listened to Eunuch Lu's report, and his heart was in turmoil. Especially when Eunuch Lu said that when the Ming Emperor was about to make a move, Su Qin's shadow suddenly walked out of the token, which was even more unbelievable. Third brother, how strong is the third brother? After a long time, the Emperor of Tang sighed softly and muttered to himself. If Su Qin killed the imperial teacher of the Ming Yuan Empire and wiped out 5 million troops with a thought, it would be understandable. After all, since ancient times, the records left about legends were that they were not afraid of armies. As long as a legend was given time, he could destroy an army no matter how large it was. But now, Su Qin was sitting in the imperial palace, but he could suppress the 6 countries from tens of thousands of miles away and make them bow and surrender. This kind of means was simply unprecedented. The imperial uncle, Eunuch Lu swallowed his saliva and said in a shocked tone, "I'm afraid he is really invincible in the world." Invincible in the world. The Emperor of Tang was silent. Invincible in the world? Throughout the ages, no legend Arhut could compare to Su Qin. However, with the third brother taking action, the 6 countries will no longer dare to play tricks and will all surrender. The Empire of Tang will unify the world. The Emperor of Tang smiled and said excitedly, "Congratulations, Your Majesty." Eunuch Lu immediately knelt on the ground and bowed. "No need to congratulate me. The unification of the world has little to do with me. If it weren't for the third brother, I wouldn't have been able to do it even if I were given another 100 years. The Emperor of Tang shook his head and said, "If it weren't for Su Qin's strength, let alone the 6 countries, even the small countries would not have surrendered." The world was unified. When the news spread from the Empire of Tang, the whole world was shocked. For hundreds of years, the various countries had been divided and at odds with each other, causing countless people to suffer. Now that the world was unified, it was a great thing for the people. At the very least, they didn't have to worry about when war would break out or if they would be forced to conscript. Furthermore, with the unification of the world, there were no more barriers between the various countries, and there was mutual commerce. This had a huge impact on the development of the world. Compared to the excited commoners, the original royal families of the 6 nations were not feeling very good. The surrender of the 6 nations was equivalent to giving up their royal status. From now on, there would be no other royal family in the world except for the Emperor of Tang's clan. Although the royal families of the 6 nations could still live comfortably with their past accumulations, some of the royal family members could not accept the loss of their royal status. His Majesty surrendered just like that? Moreover, the whole country surrendered. With such humiliation, they might as well give up their territory and expand beyond the Great Wall. That's right. If we go beyond the Great Wall, we can at least rebuild our country and maintain our royal status. However, surrendering is equivalent to handing our lives over to the Empire of Tang. No, we have to join forces to resist the imperial edict and ask His Majesty to take back the surrender. Many of the royal family members kept talking. They were very dissatisfied with the decision to surrender. In their opinion, even if they really wanted to surrender, they should let the Empire of Tang pay a price. They should not directly submit the surrender like now. What was this? The imperial cities of the various countries had not been breached yet. The armies of the various countries were still within their borders. How could he surrender without even putting up a fight? And it was such a complete surrender? When this voice reached the ears of the emperors of the various countries, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. ****. The king of Tibet was shocked and furious. He almost crushed the wine cup in his hand. Those imperial family disciples were scattered in other places and had never personally experienced the kind of pressure that was contained in the token brought by the Tang Empire's envoy. If the king of Tibet had not surrendered without hesitation, he would have followed in the footsteps of several peak grade 1 great grandmasters around him. His body would have turned into powder, and he would have been completely annihilated. Investigate. Investigate for me! Where did this kind of talk come from? The king of Tibet was furious. Finally, his expression became gloomy. Also, all the royal family members who spread this kind of talk should be given a cup of poisoned wine. If he had not seen the token brought by the envoy of the Empire of Tang, the king of Tibet might have had the same idea as these royal family members. At worst, he would just expand beyond the Great Wall. Even if he could not deal with the legends of the Empire of Tang, he could still hide. But after clearly experiencing the horror of the token, even if the king of Tibet had 10 times the courage, he would not have such absurd ideas. Escape beyond the Great Wall? How could he escape? Since the legend of Chang'an City could kill them from tens of thousands of miles away with a token, even if he really escaped beyond the Great Wall, what was the use? And at this time, Su Qin, who made the various countries fearful and uneasy, was walking slowly on the green path of the imperial palace. The reason why Su Qin helped the Emperor of Tang to suppress the various countries was because of the recovery of the vitality tide. Heaven and earth will usher in an unprecedented great era. In this case, the Empire of Tang will clear the obstacles as much as possible and unify the world. For Su Qin, it will also save some trouble. Otherwise, if the vitality completely recovers and martial arts powerhouses are born one by one, it will give the 6 countries the confidence to form alliances and fight against the Empire of Tang. If the Empire of Tang can cope with it, then it will be fine. But what if it can't? Will Su Qin make a move or not? In order to avoid trouble in the future, Su Qin directly suppressed the various countries and made a move once to avoid countless moves in the future. Third brother, how strong are you? Su Yuyan, who was next to Su Qin, couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, the 2 brothers Su Sung-ho and Su Qingyu couldn't help but pricked up their ears and listened carefully. In fact, not only them, but the whole world wanted to know how strong Su Qin was. First, he killed the Mengyuan Empire's imperial teacher, who was also a legend, with 1 finger, then burned 5 million Mengyuan soldiers, and finally, he divided into 6 and suppressed the various countries at the same time from tens of thousands of miles away. How strong is Su Qin? I have also read the ancient books collected by the Empire of Tang, and there are also records of legends. Su Yuyan whispered. Legends can indeed ignore the army and fight 1 million, but if they want to destroy 5 million soldiers like Third Brother, it will take at least half a day. But Third Brother only took a while, and there is also the battle between legends, unlike the 9th grade martial arts, where life and death can be determined in a few moves. Legends involve the power of heaven and earth. Even if one side has the advantage and can defeat the other side, it is very difficult to kill the other side. It's not impossible, but at least it will take a lot of time to slowly wear down the power of heaven and earth. The more Su Yuyan said, the more shocked he was, and the more he felt that Su Qin was unfathomable. How strong am I? Su Qin stopped, looked up at the sky, and said lightly, I also want to know. Chapter 185. In fact, since stepping into the martial Tao, Su Qin has only used his full strength once. In the past, at the foot of the southern Witch Mountain, in order to resist the avalanche, Su Qin even pulled out a little bit of power from the golden Buddha that symbolized the inheritance of Buddha's palm. At that time, Su Qin did not hold back. It was precisely because of this that Su Qin grasped the qi between heaven and earth and finally successfully stepped into the realm of Venerable Arhat. However, at that time, Su Qin was just a peak grade 1 great grandmaster, and now Su Qin is already a 7th heavenly layer Venerable Arhat. The gap between the two is like the sky and an ant. Therefore, Su Qin really doesn't know how strong he is. The only thing he knows is that even a legend like the Imperial Teacher can't stop him from casually pointing his finger. Su Yuyun, Su Sung-ho, and Su Qingyu looked at each other with shock on their faces. If someone else said this, they would never believe it, but it was Su Qin who said it. After chatting for a while, the brothers Su Sung-ho and Su Qingyu ran back to the East Palace to continue cultivation. As for Su Yuyun, he returned to the Cunning Palace. The incarnation of the cave world has been busy these 2 days, so I didn't have a chance to sign in. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The suppression of heaven and earth in the cave world is far beyond that of the human world. Even if Su Qin is at the 7th heavenly layer, he can't travel hundreds of miles in an instant. And to some extent, the current human world, with the intensification of the recovery of the world essence chi, has gradually begun to change towards the cave world. Of course, all this has no effect on Su Qin, because the speed at which he becomes stronger is faster than the recovery of the world essence chi. Unknowingly, Su Qin came to the front of the stargazing tower. "Let's sign in here today." Su Qin's thoughts moved, and he silently said, "System sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained 5 Thunder God Fist." 5 Thunder God Fist? Su Qin's expression froze slightly. A fist technique related to thunder? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as one thought after another flashed through his mind. The next moment, Su Qin's understanding of the 5 Thunder God Fist merged into his mind. A moment later, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and there seemed to be thunder exploding in the depths of his eyes, bursting forth with billions of flashes of lightning. The 5 Thunder God Fist draws in the power of thunder and transforms it into the fist and palm. Every movement of the fist is like a thunder god descending upon the world, possessing boundless power. Su Qin was overjoyed. This 5 Thunder God Fist was almost beyond the level of martial arts. It could even trigger the power of thunder. Just this point alone was enough to rank it in the top 100 of Su Qin's martial arts. According to the comprehension instilled by the system, the 5 Thunder God Fist was divided into 5 levels. From low to high, they were respectively fighting, water, cloud, earth, and heaven. Although the first 4 levels were terrifying, it was still acceptable. The thunder that was triggered was only similar to lightning. But once it reached the heavenly thunder realm, it would be able to trigger real thunder. It was terrifying beyond compare. Of course, Su Qin valued this fist technique not because of its power. Although the 5 Thunder God Fist was terrifying, there were many divine arts that were comparable, or even suppressed by Su Qin. What Su Qin was really interested in was a secret art in the heavenly thunder level of the 5 Thunder God Fist. Once the 5 Thunder God Fist was cultivated to the heavenly thunder realm, it would be able to trigger real thunder and use it to refine the body. Thunder Body Refining Art. Thunder Body Refining Art? Su Qin's eyes lit up. Ever since he entered the 7th heaven, his physical body's progress had almost stopped. Not to mention the 5th physical body transformation, it was extremely difficult to strengthen his physical body even slightly. Maybe I can use this Thunder Body Refining Art to transform my physical body and achieve the 5th physical body transformation? The more Su Qin thought about it, the brighter his mind became. If it was an ordinary martial artist, even a martial arts legend, they would be extremely cautious when it came to thunder. A martial arts legend was not afraid of ordinary thunder. But if a martial arts legend were to let down his physical defense and let the thunder enter his body, he would probably be terrified. Thunder represented destruction. If it entered the body, even a martial arts legend's body would collapse, and he would die on the spot. The secret art in the 5 Thunder God Fist allowed people to refine their bodies with thunder because it would constantly weaken the thunder that entered the body through the fist technique, so that it could achieve the effect of refining the body. However, even so, the 5 Thunder God Fist warned later cultivators that it was best not to refine their bodies with thunder unless it was a last resort. Even if it was weakened by the fist technique, how terrifying was the power of thunder? If they were not careful, even if they did not die, their physical body would be damaged and they would be unable to improve for the rest of their lives. However, These so-called risks were nothing to Su Qin. Su Qin's body had already undergone 4 transformations and was far beyond other martial arts legends. Coupled with the divine ability of flesh and blood rebirth, unless Su Qin dived into the Sea of Thunder, there would be no problem. If I want to refine my body with thunder, I need at least the 5 Thunder God Fist at the Heavenly Thunder level. Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. Su Qin had already reached the Heavenly Thunder God Fist at the Heavenly Thunder level when the system instilled it. The only shortcoming was that although Su Qin had reached the Heavenly Thunder level of the 5 Thunder God Fist, his physical body was not familiar with the 5 Thunder God Fist. But this was easy to solve. Su Qin only needed to spend some time to master the 5 Thunder God Fist. As for the rest, it was best to refine his body with thunder when dark clouds were gathering. Only then, when the power of thunder between heaven and earth gathered, could the body be stimulated to a greater extent and achieve the effect of thunder refining. Dark clouds? Su Qin thought to himself. Usually, this kind of weather would come once every 10 days or half a month. Su Qin only needed to wait patiently for a few days. Next, besides continuing to condense the micro-territory, Su Qin continued to familiarize himself with the 5 Thunder Fist. The existence who created the 5 Thunder Fist had obviously reached the mythical level and had reached the deepest level of the mythical level. Otherwise, how would an ordinary mythical level dare to think about thunder? Therefore, while Su Qin was familiarizing himself with the 5 Thunder God Fist, all kinds of insights kept surging into his mind. It was as if Su Qin had truly become the creator, as he once again unleashed the 5 Thunder God Fist step by step, shocking the world. Finally, a few days later, Chang'an City was covered by dark clouds, and a storm was brewing as if it was about to rain. Now, Su Qin stood above Chang'an City and looked up at the endless dark clouds. Rip! Light blue lightning flashed past, and it traveled thousands of miles in the blink of an eye, bursting forth with destructive power. Compared to heaven and earth, the power of an individual is ultimately insignificant. Su Qin sighed softly, and his expression was slightly solemn. He slowly raised his right hand, clenched his palm into a fist, and gently punched forward. Boom! In an instant, traces of terrifying thunder gathered, colliding and lingering between Su Qin's fist. Chapter 186. Rumble. Su Qin continuously punched out the 5 Thunder God Fist. With the 5 Thunder God Fist at the Heavenly Thunder Realm, he immediately attracted wisps of lightning power. Su Qin's expression changed slightly. He could feel that as the lightning continued to surge into his body gradually became numb, as if billions of ants were constantly gnawing on him. My physical body is getting stronger. Su Qin was shocked, and joy appeared on his face. He could clearly feel that his body, which had been stagnant, was actually improving at a slow but firm speed. A moment later, Su Qin had completely adapted to this level of lightning entering his body. It's too slow, too slow. Su Qin shook his head and frowned slightly. If his physical body improved slowly at this speed, he could indeed complete the 5th transformation, but that would take at least a few decades. After all, this improvement would only happen when it was rainy and lightning gathered. And such weather might not happen even once in a few dozen days. Thinking of this, Su Qin looked up at the dark clouds in the sky. With my physical body, even without the 5 Thunder God Fist weakening it, it will be fine to withstand some lightning. Besides, I have the flesh rebirth ability, so I don't need to be so cautious. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Originally, he was going to adapt for a few hours before thinking about other things and going further with the thunder body tempering art. But now, Su Qin already knew where the limit of the thunder body tempering art was. The thunder body tempering art is not difficult for me at all. There is no need to adapt at all. Su Qin stopped the 5 Thunder God Fist and looked up at the endless dark clouds. Directly enter the dark clouds and proceed with the last step of the thunder body tempering art. Boom! Su Qin turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed into the dark clouds. Whoosh! Lightning exploded and surged like dragons and snakes. Ha ha! That's more like it. Suchin's eyes were burning. Feeling the rapid improvement of his physical body, he began to perform the 5 Thunder God Fist again. At the same time, just as Suchin rushed into the dark clouds and used the Thunder Body Tempering Art, a man in a blue robe slowly walked into Chang'an City. Is this the capital of the Empire of Tang? The blue-robed man was none other than the martial arts legend who had returned from overseas. During this period of time, the blue-robed man had roughly walked around the continent, and learned that the Empire of Tang was the most powerful country in the world. Therefore, if the blue-robed man wanted to control the continent under his feet, the simplest way was to control the Empire of Tang. After all, even if he was a martial arts legend, it was impossible for him to build a force that could sweep across the mainland in a short period of time. Since that was the case, why not just take over the Empire of Tang directly? It would be easy and simple. This was the purpose of the blue-robed man's visit to Chang'an. As for whether the Empire of Tang would agree or not, the blue-robed man didn't even consider it. In his opinion, as a martial arts legend from overseas where martial arts flourished, he wanted to enter the Empire of Tang. What ability did the other party have to refuse? It is said that the Empire of Tang has given birth to a legend? The blue-robed man thought absent-mindedly. During this period of traveling around the continent, he didn't do nothing. At least he heard some information, especially about the legend in Chang'an City. In the rumors that the blue-robed man heard, the legend in Chang'an City could shatter heaven and earth with a raise of his hand, and his divine power was like that of a god. Humph! A group of fools! Casually treating a new legend as an immortal god! A trace of contempt appeared on the blue-robed man's face. Martial arts flourished overseas. Although legends were also rare, there were many in the major sects, and in addition to the major sects, there were also many legends rogue cultivators. How could it be like the Empire of Tang, where only one legend was born every few hundred years? But even the existence of the leader of the major sects dared not compare himself to a god. The road to legend is difficult. Many of the major sects control the martial arts resources, but even so, most of the legends in these major sects stop at the third heaven. As the blue-robed man walked, he thought in his heart. However, this legend of the Empire of Tang was able to enter the legend realm in this barren continent. Obviously, he has some aptitude and comprehension. The blue-robed man nodded slightly to express his affirmation. Before the recovery of the Yuan-Chi tide, the Yuan-Chi on this continent was scarce, and there was almost no spiritual opportunity. To be able to take that step in such an environment where almost all methods were cut off, not to mention other things, just the determination to go against the current was praiseworthy. If I meet this legend later, I may not necessarily kill him. If the other party is willing to follow me, I can give him a chance. The blue-robed man thought in his heart. From the beginning to the end, the blue-robed man had never considered whether he had enough strength to kill the other party. For the blue-robed man, he came from overseas where martial arts flourished. Over there, whether it was the secret arts or the vision, he didn't know how much better it was than this continent. Not to mention that the blue-robed man had already reached the third heavenly layer of the mythical realm. Even overseas, he was considered a powerhouse, second only to the elders and guardians of the great sects. How could he not be able to deal with a mythical realm native from a small place? But why haven't I felt the aura of that legend until now? The blue-robed man suddenly frowned. Could it be that the other party is not here, but has left? The blue-robed man guessed in his heart. Forget it. Go directly to the Emperor of Tang Palace. Whether the legend is there or not, I will directly suppress with absolute force. Thinking of this, the blue-robed man turned and walked toward the Emperor of Tang Palace. With the strength of the blue-robed man, it was naturally easy to avoid the patrolling forbidden army. In less than a moment, the blue-robed man had already entered the palace. The next moment, the blue-robed man rose into the sky and stood above the palace, overlooking the entire palace. Not bad. There are a few peak grade 1. The blue-robed man constantly scanned with his divine sense. Huh! There is a physique with clear meridians? Even if he were to be placed overseas, he would still be able to join those great sects. The blue-robed man's divine sense instantly focused on Li Wan. Not bad, not bad. As expected of a place of great strife. The blue-robed man was very satisfied. Why is there a place where my divine sense can't penetrate? The blue-robed man seemed to have noticed something and looked in the direction of the East Palace. Heaven and earth formation? The blue-robed man muttered to himself. It seems that the legend is hiding in the heaven and earth formation. No wonder I can't feel his aura. Just when the blue-robed man was ready to break the heaven and earth formation and then suppress the legend of the Empire of Tang and give the other party a chance to follow him. Walala! One drop of rain after another kept pouring down. An invisible barrier appeared on the blue-robed man's body, blocking all the rain outside. It's raining? The blue-robed man subconsciously looked up at the sky and looked at the cloudy sky. However, the blue-robed man's calm expression froze in an instant as he looked at her. Under the blue-robed man's shocked gaze, he saw that in the depths of the endless dark clouds, a blurry figure was constantly punching out one punch after another. Each punch had a large number of lightning entwined and collided, bursting out countless rays of light. The blurry figure was like a thunder god descending, personally demonstrating the fist technique in the sea of lightning. The aura of the Supreme Young shot straight into the sky. What is this? The blue-robed man was stunned on the spot and trembled all over. Chapter 187. Chang'an City. The man in the blue robe was dumbfounded and his face was full of horror. In the dark clouds, lightning was everywhere. Even if it was a legend who could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground, if they rushed in, they would be annihilated. Even the man in the blue robe didn't dare to approach the dark clouds with his divine sense, for fear of being attacked by the lightning and damaging his divine sense. But at this moment, what the man in the blue robe dreamed of was that someone had entered the dark clouds, ignored the lightning, and demonstrated a fist technique. If this were to spread to the overseas martial arts world, it would definitely make a group of legends horrified. Illusion? The man in the blue robe rejected this idea as soon as it appeared in his mind. If it was an ordinary person, they might have hallucinations, but he was a third heavenly layer legend with perfect essence, chi, and spirit. How could he have hallucinations? Is there really a god in this world? The man in the blue robe thought quickly and felt his whole body stiffen. As a martial artist, especially a legend, logically speaking, his martial arts will was firm, and he only believed in himself and not external things, but the scene in front of him was too sensational. No. It's not a god! At this moment, the man in the blue robe seemed to have discovered something, and his face changed again. Because he saw one terrifying lightning after another constantly pouring into the body of the vague figure. This vague figure in the endless dark clouds was like a black hole that devoured everything, constantly absorbing the lightning. In front of the blurry figure, the lightning that could make an ordinary legend take 3 steps back was extremely obedient, and did not go berserk. Lightning body refinement, this is lightning body refinement. The man in the blue robe swallowed his saliva, and his heart trembled. Could it be that this lord is one of the ancestors of Raytheon? The man in the blue robe couldn't help but think. Raytheon was one of the major sects in the overseas martial arts world, and it controlled countless overseas martial arts cultivation resources. It was said that Raytheon's core cultivation method was to control lightning and punish on behalf of the heavens, which was extremely terrifying. However, what puzzled the man in the blue robe was that Raytheon's disciples, even the sect master, only controlled lightning and did not devour it. But in any case, at this moment, the vague figure standing in the endless dark clouds was the most similar to Raytheon overseas, and the man in the blue robe could only rely on Raytheon. Damn it! Didn't Raytheon's group always look down on the Tianji sect? Why are you reacting so quickly this time? The blue-robed man felt bitter in his heart. Originally, he had thought that since he was the first to arrive on this continent, he would be able to lay out his plans in advance. Once the origin energy recovered and the battlefield revealed its extraordinariness, he would be able to obtain enough benefits. At that time, even if the major sects overseas reacted, he would be able to escape unscathed. But now, Raytheon's reaction was even faster than his. Long before he set foot on this continent, Raytheon had probably already taken control of the Empire of Tang. What should I do now? The blue-robed man's thoughts fluctuated. Facing a colossus like Raytheon, no matter how unwilling the blue-robed man was, he could only concede. When the senior comes down, I'll give in. We're both overseas myths, so even Raytheon shouldn't make things difficult for me. The blue-robed man made up his mind and prepared to wait patiently for a while before greeting the thunderbolt-devouring senior Raytheon in the endless dark clouds. The blue-robed man wanted to turn around and leave now, but at this moment, he had already broken into Raytheon's territory. If he left directly, it would obviously be a provocation to Raytheon. In that case, he might as well stay. Besides, the blue-robed man vaguely sensed that he had been enveloped by a faintly discernible aura. Even if he wanted to leave, he was afraid that he couldn't. A few hours later, the dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated. Under the respectful gaze of the man in the blue robe, Suchin slowly walked down from the void, neither hurriedly nor slowly. Rogue cultivator Wan Qing greets Senior Raytheon. The blue-robed man Wan Qing bowed. Suchin didn't speak, but quietly experienced the changes in his body. After being refined by thunder, his body at this moment was faintly flashing with lightning, which made people's hearts palpitate. When the blue-robed man Wan Qing saw this, he became even more respectful. Although he didn't know why Suchin could devour thunderbolts, in Wan Qing's eyes, Suchin was at least one of Raytheon's most ancient ancestors. This time, Raytheon had invited Suchin out of his deep slumber in order to seize the great struggle. Raytheon? I'm not Raytheon's man. Suchin carefully sensed for a while, then looked at the blue-robed man Wan Qing and casually said, What? Senior isn't from Raytheon? The blue-robed man Wan Qing's expression stiffened. In his eyes, besides Raytheon, no one could compare to Suchin's ability to immerse himself in the endless sea of lightning. If Suchin wasn't Raytheon's senior, then which great sect did he come from? Then which great sect did senior come from? The blue-robed man Wan Qing stammered and mustered his courage to ask. Great sect? Suchin shook his head slightly. I'm not from any great sect either. As soon as these words came out, the blue-robed man Wan Qing was suddenly stunned. In a flash, an incredible thought suddenly flashed through Wan Qing's mind. Senior, are you the legend who oversees Chang'an City? The blue-robed man Wan Qing asked in a trembling voice. Hearing this, Suchin glanced at Wan Qing with a faint smile and didn't answer. However, Suchin's expression, in Wan Qing's view, was no different from admitting it. At this moment, Wan Qing's heart went cold. If Suchin was a legend from overseas, he might have let him go. But now, Suchin had revealed his identity as the legend who had been overseeing Chang'an City, so there was no reason to let him go. Okay. I'll give you two choices. Suchin looked at Wan Qing with interest. The first is to die, and the second is to serve me. Choose one. Although Suchin had been refining his body with thunder in the depths of the dark clouds, he had been watching Wan Qing's every move after entering Chang'an City. Although Suchin didn't know Wan Qing's purpose, he could feel that he didn't have any good intentions. Under such circumstances, Suchin naturally wouldn't let him go. The reason why he gave Wan Qing the second choice was because he was a level 3 legend. Although a third heavenly layer divine realm cultivator was still not worth mentioning in Suchin's eyes, he could barely be considered a powerhouse. Before Suchin, there hadn't been a legend in the world for hundreds of years. A level 3 legend like Wan Qing, the blue-robed man, would definitely be able to shake the world in normal times. Suchin had subdued Wan Qing, so if there was anything in the future, he didn't need to do it himself. He could just leave it to Wan Qing. Chapter 188. The blue-robed Wan Qing's expression changed as he struggled internally. He completely believed that Suchin had the means to kill him. Disregarding the ability to bathe in lightning earlier, just the aura that Suchin casually revealed was enough to make Wan Qing feel as if he was facing the vast sky. In the end, Wan Qing's desire to live overcame everything. He bowed to Suchin and said, I'm willing to serve Senior. Good. Don't resist. With a thought, Su Qin separated a strand of divine will and planted it into Ruan Qing's body. This strand of divine will was created by Su Qin based on the great Tao heart demonic seed art in the heavenly devil tome. It could be deeply rooted in Ruan Qing's mind. In the future, if Ruan Qing had any thoughts of betrayal, this strand of divine will would explode and destroy Ruan Qing's divine will. Of course, it was not that Ruan Qing did not have a way to break it. If Ruan Qing could surpass Su Qin in terms of cultivation level, he could temporarily suppress this strand of divine will. But with Su Qin's cultivation speed, this method was almost impossible to achieve. Master, Ruan Qing felt a strange aura settle down. He sighed in his heart and said respectfully to Su Qin. In fact, Ruan Qing still had a trace of hope, but now he had completely surrendered. All right. Let's talk when we get back. Su Qin glanced at the sky. Now that the clouds had passed, it would soon be daytime. Thinking of this, Su Qin brought Ruan Qing back to the Eastern Palace. The moment they entered the Eastern Palace, the world changed. Vitality was abundant, and qi filled the air. It was as if they had arrived at a paradise. This is? Ruan Qing's eyes widened in disbelief. There are at least dozens of heaven and earth great formations superimposed on everything. With so many heaven and earth great formations fused perfectly, even those true formation masters overseas cannot compare to this. Ruan Qing was extremely shocked. When he first entered the palace, he had sensed the heaven and earth great formation enveloping the Eastern Palace. But at that time, because of the heaven and earth great formation, Ruan Qing could not discover more. However, after entering the heaven and earth grand formation, Ruan Qing was completely astonished. He originally thought that Su Qin was only proficient in the Tao of lightning, but now it seemed that Su Qin's involvement in array formations had also reached an unimaginable level. It should be known that the more heaven and earth formations there were, the better. This was because different heaven and earth formations would repel each other. Su Qin was able to perfectly merge dozens of heaven and earth formations together without any conflict. This was simply incredible. At the very least, Ruan Qing had never heard of such an array master overseas. The vitality qi is so dense, and the qi is so pervasive. It's not any weaker than the outer seas. The more Ruan Qing looked, the more shocked she became. It should be noted that the reason why overseas martial arts had been thriving all year round and gave birth to one martial arts legend after another was because of the rich vitality and pervasive qi. But now, Ruan Qing suddenly realized that the Eastern Palace, which was enveloped by the heaven and earth formation, could almost be seen as a smaller version of the overseas martial arts world. Have you seen enough? Su Qin glanced at the dumbfounded Ruan Qing and said indifferently. Master, I've seen enough. Ruan Qing's face turned pale, and he immediately bowed and stood still. Since you've seen enough, I have a few questions for you. Su Qin raised his head slightly, and suddenly the air in all directions began to distort, completely isolating them from the outside world. Su Qin's purpose of subduing Ruan Qing was not only because of his strength, but also because he was an overseas legend. How is the situation overseas now? Su Qin asked casually. What is Master referring to? Ruan Qing asked cautiously. Just saying, Su Qin said lightly. Okay. Ruan Qing thought for a while, as if organizing his words. Now, the overseas martial arts world is controlled by the major sects, and in addition to the major sects, there are also some itinerant cultivators. These itinerant cultivators are unwilling to join the major sects and work for them, so they formed their own forces. Some time ago, the divine predictor of this generation of the Tianji sect predicted that the recovery of the tide of vitality was imminent, and pointed out the location of the great battle during the recovery of the tide of vitality. When Ruan Qing said this, she couldn't help but glance at Su Qin, and continued. Although Tianji's prophecy has spread throughout the entire overseas, no one believes it. It's just that I once found a few words left behind by a powerful overseas powerhouse on an island, and realized that Tianji's prophecy is likely to be true, so I rushed to this continent. You mean, this continent is the place of the great battle? Su Qin continued to ask thoughtfully. Exactly. Wan Qing bowed. The divine predictor's prophecy is vague, but I checked countless ancient books and locked onto this place among the many continents. I just didn't expect that Master's means are so great that you found this place so long before the divine predictor, Wan Qing said respectfully. At this moment, in Wan Qing's heart, Su Qin must have known something, so he came to this continent early. Otherwise, with Su Qin's ability, even if he went to the overseas martial arts world, he would be worshipped by the sect masters of the major sections. How could he stay on this continent? Many continents? Su Qin repeated. Yes, Master. But almost all of these continents have thin vitality, far inferior to the overseas martial arts world. Wan Qing immediately replied. What is the strength of those major sects, and what is the level of the strongest expert? Su Qin suddenly changed the topic and asked. This was also what Su Qin had always wanted to know. Originally, he thought that the strongest expert overseas was at most the 5th or 6th heavenly layer, but listening to Wan Qing, the overseas martial arts world seemed to be far more prosperous than he thought. Master, the major sects overseas have a deep heritage and have been passed down for thousands of years. There are many legends in the sect, and the deputy sect masters and elders are generally 4th heavenly layer legends. As for the sect master, only a 5th heavenly layer legend is qualified to be the sect master. 5th heavenly layer? So weak? Su Qin's expression didn't change. What else? Su Qin continued to ask. In addition to these, it is said that in the depths of the various high sects, there are their own ancestors in deep slumber. These ancestors are extremely powerful and are the final foundation of the high sections. Unless it is absolutely necessary, the high sects will absolutely not awaken the ancestors in their sections. Wan Qing said truthfully. When he first saw Su Qin, he thought that Su Qin was Raytheon's ancestor. But now, it seemed that Wan Qing had given up this idea. This was because the old ancestors of the exalted sects were all nearing the end of their lifespans. It was impossible for them to be as vigorous as Su Qin. I see. Su Qin nodded slightly. Then Su Qin asked about the strength of these ancestors, but Wan Qing didn't know. The only thing he knew was that they were very strong, at least more powerful than the 5th heavenly layer legends. In the end, Su Qin looked at Wan Qing with a solemn expression and asked in a deep voice. Then do you know if there is an Earth Immortal overseas? Chapter 189. According to Wan Qing, in the overseas martial arts world, the sect masters who are in charge of the major sects are only at the 5th or 6th heavenly layer. As for the 7th heavenly layer, perhaps the ancestors sleeping in their respective sects have reached this level. But from beginning to end, Wan Qing never mentioned Earth Immortals, as if Earth Immortals were also a taboo in the overseas martial arts world. Earth Immortals. Wan Qing's face turned pale. Master, even overseas Earth Immortals have not shown their traces for thousands of years. It seems that every existence who steps into this level will not stay overseas for long, as if they want to go somewhere else. Maybe those great sects know more, but I really don't know, Wan Qing said with a sad face. At first, when Su Qin asked about the overseas martial arts world, Wan Qing was relieved because Su Qin's questions were not unanswerable to him. But after a few sentences, Su Qin changed the topic and talked about Earth Immortals, which made Wan Qing want to cry. It's not that he didn't want to answer, but he really didn't know how to answer. What kind of existence are Earth Immortals? How could a mere 3rd heavenly layer legend know about it? Forget it. You don't know either. Su Qin glanced at Wan Qing and didn't continue to ask. You just said that the reason why you came here is because of the prophecy of Tianjizi? Su Qin touched his chin and asked casually. That's right. Seeing that Su Qin didn't mention Earth Immortals, Wan Qing immediately said. Tianjizi sect is very special overseas. They don't compete for resources and have few disciples. This generation's Tianjizi has prophesied about the land of great battle, but few people believe it. When Wan Qing said this, she hesitated for a moment before continuing. However, Master, as time passes, the the recovery of the vitality tide will become more and more obvious. The sect masters of the major sects will definitely notice it. At that time, they will definitely interfere here. Oh, I see. Su Qin wasn't worried at all. Su Qin was already at the 7th heavenly level, and he was not far from condensing the micro-realm. Even if all the powerful sects from overseas were to come, Su Qin would not be afraid at all. However, in order to be absolutely safe, it's better to condense the micro-domain as soon as possible and break through to the 8th heaven or even the 9th heaven. Actually, it's best to reach the Great Arhat realm. However, even if the vitality tide recovers and cultivation becomes easier, it shouldn't be easy to reach the Great Arhat realm. Su Qin thought to himself as he asked Wan Qin to leave. Initially, he was not in a hurry to cultivate. After all, Su Qin was different from ordinary martial arts legends. He had 1,000 years of shouyuan, so he could cultivate leisurely. But now, Su Qin had a sense of urgency in his heart. The lightning body tempering technique is best cultivated during rainy weather. There is no need to waste time on it at all other times. Right now, my main focus is to condense the micro-domain. The 7th heaven with the micro-domain and the 7th heaven without the micro-domain are two completely different levels. As long as I can condense the micro-domain, it will be a qualitative change to my fighting ability. Su Qin thought to himself. In addition to condensing the micro-domain, I also need to enter the 8th heaven as soon as possible. Although the improvement from entering the 8th heaven is not as great as the improvement from the 6th to the 7th heaven, it is still a leap in realm. Su Qin made up his mind. Next, Su Qin mainly focused on condensing the micro-domain, improving his realm, and cultivating the lightning body tempering technique. Among them, the lightning body tempering technique depended on the amount of rainy weather. As for the first two, it would depend on Su Qin to spend a lot of time. Thinking of this, Su Qin's figure flashed and returned to the majestic underground palace to cultivate. As for Wan Qin, she was thrown to the East Palace by Su Qin to guide the family Su, Li Wan, and the others. Although Wan Qin trembled in front of Su Qin and did not even dare to speak too loudly. But in fact, Wan Qin was a 3rd heaven legend. This kind of strength was enough to guide the family Su who had not even reached the 9th grade of the martial path. And for the family Su, perhaps at first, they were not used to Wan Qin's existence. But as time passed, they got used to it, and knew that Wan Qin was Su Qin's servant. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, several months had passed. In the majestic underground palace, Su Qin sat cross-legged. His physical aura was restrained and he looked like a block of wood. But inside his body, his blood surged and roared like the Yangtze River. In addition, whether it was his bones, muscles, or organs, they all bloomed with traces of gold. I didn't expect that before I even condensed the micro-domain, my physical body would transform in advance. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and whispered to himself. In the past few months, more than half of the time was rainy. Because of this, Su Qin had to go to the dark clouds to bathe in the thunder every other day. After dozens of days, his physical body that had endured the thunder body tempering art completed the 5th transformation. After the 5th transformation, the trace of gold is obviously much stronger. Su Qin nodded slightly and was satisfied. After the 4th transformation, Su Qin's body gave birth to a trace of gold. This trace of gold was related to the legendary Buddha's golden body and symbolized eternity and immortality. And now, after the 5th transformation, Su Qin's body gave birth to a trace of gold again. I wonder what level my physical body has reached now. Su Qin raised his right hand and felt the surging power in his body as he thought to himself. Since the transformation of my physical body is complete. Next, the main thing is to condense the micro-domain. Su Qin's expression turned serious as his thoughts fluctuated. Once the micro-domain was condensed, the power of heaven and earth within 100 miles would be compressed to 100 or 1,000 meters. It would cause a qualitative change. Cave World. Su Qin and Mohim finally arrived in front of the Demon Cloud City. In fact, if Su Qin hadn't deliberately slowed down along the way to see if there were other places where he could sign in, they would have arrived long ago. Master, the demon cloud city is in front, Mohim said respectfully, with a complicated look on her face. She paid a huge price to barely escape from the demon cloud city. She didn't expect to return to the demon cloud city now. Su Qin didn't speak, he just looked at the demon cloud city quietly. The demon cloud city was a very magnificent city. It stood tall, as if it was standing above the clouds. A powerful aura emerged one after another, making people fearful. Master, we can sneak into the demon cloud city quietly, Mohim said cautiously. No need. Su Qin shook his head slightly. Just now, he had roughly scanned the demon cloud city with the celestial aura gazing technique and knew the background of the demon cloud city. Naturally, he wouldn't waste time. No need? Mohim blinked, not knowing what Su Qin meant. However, the next moment, under Mohim's incredulous gaze, Su Qin casually took a step forward, raised his right hand, and slashed down towards the demon cloud city. Rumble! A bright sword light formed and slashed down from the sky. Chapter 190. In the demon cloud city. The demon cloud city lord was sitting high on the throne with a gloomy expression. The demon king level demons below also had ugly expressions, and an oppressive aura enveloped the entire hall. Since Mohim escaped from the demon cloud city, whether it was the demon cloud city lord or the other demon king level subordinates, they had been furious. Mohim had a rare purine body. She was a gift prepared by the demon cloud city lord to the cathode city lord. But now, the cathode city lord was waiting for him to deliver Mohim, but she was gone. At the thought of angering the cathode city lord, the faces of the demon kings changed. City lord, what should we do now? Mohim is your junior. She escaped from the demon cloud city. You should know, right? A demon king with dark pupils said. Yes, city lord, if we don't find Mohim and miss the appointed date with the cathode city lord, how can we face the anger of the cathode city lord? Yes, city lord, didn't you leave any means on Mohim? Several demon kings looked at the demon cloud city lord and asked. After a long time, the demon cloud city lord said, I did leave a wisp of demonic will on Mohim. As soon as these words came out, the rest of the demon kings were overjoyed. With the strength of the demon cloud city lord, if he really left a wisp of demonic will on Mohim, even if the other party escaped to the ends of the earth, he could still track her position. It's just. The demon cloud city lord glanced at the crowd and shook his head. My wisp of demonic will has been dispelled. What? Who dares to dispel the city lord's demonic will? Several demon kings were in disbelief. The demon cloud city lord's power was monstrous. Which demon dared to dispel the demon cloud city lord's demonic will? Besides, even if ordinary demons wanted to dispel the demon cloud city lord's demonic will, they couldn't do it. Only a powerful demon king whose strength was close to the city lord's, or even the same as the city lord, could do this. Don't worry. Although the demonic will has been expelled, I still have another method to locate Mohim. However, this method can only be used once. The demon cloud city lord said. I've invited a few friends. When they arrive, we'll start using this method. When the demon cloud city lord said this, he snorted coldly. I want to know who dares to put their hands on my things. The demon cloud city lord's eyes were cold. At first, when Mohim escaped from the demon cloud city, he wasn't worried at all. Instead, he asked a few of his subordinates to go to the location locked by the demonic will and capture Mohim. However, what the city lord didn't expect was that the subordinates he sent out not only died on the spot, but even the wisp of demonic will he planted in Mohim was forcibly expelled. When the city lord learned about this, he immediately realized that this might be the doing of one of his great enemies. Therefore, he did not do anything. Instead, he was going to invite a few of his good friends over. When the time came, they would attack together and completely eliminate that great enemy. The words of the city lord shook the spirits of the other demon kings. They praised one after another. The city lord's approach is really foolproof. Yes, no matter who secretly expelled the demonic will of the city lord, how can he defeat the city lord? This time, let him know that offending the city lord won't end well. The demon king sneered again and again. City lord, I've been cultivating recently, and I need powerful demon blood essence. When I take down that demon, can you give me his body? A demon king said. In the eyes of these demon kings, it was as if they could already see the scene of the other party wailing under the suppression of the city lord. Body? The city lord frowned. The body of a demon king of the same level was also of great benefit to him, not to mention that he had to pay a price to invite his good friends. The city lord did not reply, and the demon king who spoke no longer mentioned this matter. I really want to see the appearance of the demon king who secretly attacked, begging for mercy at the feet of the city lord. Another demon king licked his lips. Suddenly, at this moment, a sharp light that could destroy everything enveloped the entire demon cloud city. Not good! There's a sneak attack! The city lord of the demon cloud city changed greatly. He released his demonic will and found a sword light that seemed to split heaven and earth. Damn it! The other demon kings also had ugly looks on their faces. The next moment, the demon cloud city lord and several demon kings disappeared from the hall. Outside the demon cloud city, when Su Qin used his fingers like a sword and slashed out that sword light, the entire demon cloud city shook. Countless auras emerged, turning into a black barrier, wanting to block this sword light. Master! Mohim was dumbfounded. She originally thought that even if Su Qin wanted to deal with the city lord, he would choose a suitable time to do it. But now, Su Qin directly slashed out a sword light towards the demon cloud city. This was simply preparing to suppress the entire demon cloud city with his own strength. Mohim knew that Su Qin was very strong and was likely to be a high-level demon king, but even a high-level demon king wouldn't dare to make a move like this. In the demon cloud city, there was not only the city lord, but also the city lord's subordinates, as well as other demon kings who lived in seclusion. In addition, the demon cloud city has existed for thousands of years, and who knows how many great arrays have been arranged by the previous city lords. Su Qin's move was equivalent to ignoring the previous city lords. How arrogant was this? Rumble, as the sword light continued to press down. The black barrier formed outside the demon cloud city became deeper and deeper, and the great arrays were activated one after another under the threat of the sword light, gathering infinite power and pouring into the black barrier. At this moment, several figures appeared outside the demon cloud city. They were the city lord and the subordinates of the demon kings. Block it for me! The city lord's expression was ferocious, and he instantly mobilized the power of the entire demon cloud city, wanting to block the sword light that Su Qin slashed down. Rumble! The demon cloud city shook, and demonic energy emerged, condensing into thousands of layers of black barriers, blocking in front of the sword light. Crack! The sword light cut through more than 5,000 layers of black barriers in a row, leaving only a few hundred thin layers of black barriers, before slowly dissipating. Blocked it? The city lord broke out in cold sweat. He couldn't imagine that if he hadn't blocked this sword light and allowed it to slash down, the entire demon cloud city would have been cut in two. Finally blocked it. The city lord only felt weak. Just now, he not only used the power accumulated by the demon cloud city for so many years, but also burned his blood essence to barely block the sword light. It can be said that at this moment, the city lord's blood essence was damaged, and it would take decades for him to recover. Blocked it! City lord, we finally survived! The other demon kings breathed a sigh of relief, and a smile of relief appeared on their faces. And at this moment, Su Qin glanced at the demon cloud city in surprise. The next moment, Su Qin raised his right hand and gently pressed it towards the city lord and the other demon kings. The void trembled as demonic energy gathered. It was as large as the sky, as if a hand could cover the sky. Chapter 191. Outside Demon Cloud City. Su Qin's eyes were calm as he raised his right hand and pressed down gently. Grab! In an instant, It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down, the sun and the moon were overturned, and a giant palm appeared. This was purely the condensation of world energy that Su-Chin gathered from dozens of miles around. It was mighty and suppressed everything. The demon kings of the cave world correspond to the legend level of Venerable Arhat. They also use world energy as a means of fighting. No! When the demon Cloud City Lord saw the giant palm coming down from the sky, his hands and feet went cold. In order to block the sword light just now, he had already paid a huge price. How could he block the giant palm that was even more powerful than the sword light? All of you go! The demon Cloud City Lord's eyes were scarlet. He glanced at the demon kings who were about to escape behind him and stretched out his right hand. Suddenly, these demon kings only felt their bodies stiffen, and the blood in their bodies began to riot uncontrollably. In an instant, their figures skyrocketed, and they completely lost their minds and rushed towards the giant palm. Rumble! After sacrificing several demon kings, the giant palm only paused for a moment before it continued to crush down. Seeing this, the demon Cloud City Lord didn't dare to stay for a moment. He directly turned into a demonic light and jumped a few miles away. Huh! When Su-Chin saw this scene, with a thought, the giant palm that shrouded the demon Cloud City slowly dissipated. He came to the demon Cloud City for the purpose of signing in. If he wiped out the demon Cloud City with a single palm, wouldn't it be putting the cart before the horse? In the demon Cloud City, countless demons only felt that they had walked on the edge of life and death. In the cave world, not all demons were born powerful. There were also weak demons. But at this moment, whether it was the weak demons or the demon kings, they all looked at Su-Chin in shock. Who is he? He's too powerful, even the city lord is not his opponent. Not only is he powerful, but the city lord couldn't even block a single blow from him. This is not just powerful. Countless demons trembled in their hearts, and fear appeared on their faces. Su-Chin naturally didn't care about the thoughts of these demons. He turned his eyes slightly and looked a few miles away. The demon Cloud City Lord, who had turned into a demonic light, stopped there. If your excellency wants Mohim, just say it. I will give it to you. Why do you have to do this? The city lord stared at Su-Chin and said word by word. At this time, when the city lord saw Mohim hiding behind Su-Chin, how could he not understand the whole story? He cried bitterly in his heart. He never thought that a powerhouse like Su-Chin, who was close to a high-level devil king, would actually make a move for Mohim. For Mohim? Su-Chin saw that the demon Cloud City Lord had misunderstood, but he didn't want to explain. He came to the demon Cloud City just to find a place where he could sign in for a long time. As for avenging Mohim, he didn't even think about it. Even without Mohim, Su-Chin would still come to the demon Cloud City. Sir, you must be from another large region, right? Do you know that behind my demon Cloud City stands the Cathode City Lord? Seeing that Su-Chin didn't speak, the city lord was overjoyed. He continued to speak, faintly revealing a threat. His position was several miles away from Su-Chin. Even if Su-Chin made a move, the city lord was confident that he would have enough time to escape. Go to hell. Su-Chin was too lazy to talk nonsense, and directly slashed out a sword light. Whoosh! A bright sword light formed in an instant and slashed towards the city lord. Not good! The moment the sword light formed, the city lord's scalp exploded. His figure turned into a demonic light and fled into the distance. Damn it! He was still hiding his strength just now. The city lord felt the shocking sword intent emitted by the sword light. There was no threat at all. He burned his blood essence again, and his speed continued to skyrocket. Burning my blood essence twice in a row has greatly damaged my foundation. I'm afraid there is no hope for me to go any further. The city lord's heart was filled with sorrow, and he couldn't help but speed up again. When I see the Cathode City Lord, I must ask the city lord to avenge me. A trace of ruthlessness appeared on the city lord's face. His future was cut off, and it was not an exaggeration to say that his hatred for Su-Chin was monstrous. Even if he had to pay a high price, he must ask the Cathode City Lord to help him. He should have escaped by now, right? The city lord's speed had reached the limit at this moment, and he subconsciously glanced back. However, with just a glance, the city lord's pupils suddenly shrank. He saw a sword light arriving in an instant, slashing towards the city lord. The city lord's body quickly disappeared. His demonic essence, flesh, blood, and bones all disappeared. After a long time, a dark demonic will emerged, condensing into an illusory figure. I'm not willing! The city lord's body was destroyed, and now only a wisp of demonic will was left. He would not survive for long. However, before the city lord could recover from the blow of losing his body, he felt a faint sword intent in the depths of the demonic will. This sword intent was getting bigger and sharper, and finally directly cut the city lord's demonic will into several pieces. That sword light not only destroyed my physical body, but also my demonic will. At the last moment of losing consciousness, the demon cloud city lord suddenly woke up, and then completely disappeared. Outside the demon cloud city, after Su Qin casually slashed out a sword light, he no longer paid attention to it. Mohim next to him was stunned. Everything just happened too fast. From Su Qin's palm pressing down on the demon cloud city to the city lord being forced to escape, only a few moments passed. Master, you. Mohim was shocked speechless. After a while, Mohim reluctantly calmed down and couldn't help but say, Master, the city lord is vengeful. If he escapes, he will definitely come back for revenge in the future. After the city lord burned his blood essence, he flew at least hundreds of miles away, so Mohim didn't see that the city lord's body and demonic will were completely destroyed by Su Qin's sword light. Don't worry. He can't escape. Su Qin didn't care, and looked at the demon cloud city again. I hope there is enough Dao accumulation for the system to sign in. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. The Dao accumulation needed by the system was not the Dao of the righteous path, but the Dao of the origin of all things, the Dao of the primal chaos. The Dao here included all things. The righteous path belonged to the Dao, the evil path belonged to the Dao, and the demonic path also belonged to the Dao. No one should stop me from signing in this time. Su Qin glanced at the demon cloud city, took a step into the air, and appeared on the city wall of the demon cloud city, overlooking the entire demon cloud city. Countless demons were terrified. The city lord, who was invincible in their hearts, couldn't even block a single move from Su Qin, let alone them. At this moment, a demon king suddenly shouted and bowed deeply to Su Qin. Greetings, city lord. In the cave world, the strong were respected. Su Qin killed the city lord and became the new city lord of the demon cloud city. Greetings, city lord. Greetings, city lord. Greetings, city lord. Countless demons reacted quickly and bowed respectfully to Su Qin. Chapter 192. City lord? Su Qin raised his eyebrows. Master. At this time, Mohim hurried over and quickly explained to Su Qin. Not only in the demon cloud city, but everywhere in the cave world knew this. If you have the ability to kill the demon god in the depths of the world, you can become a new demon god. So that's how it is. Su Qin nodded slightly. In fact, becoming the city lord of the demon cloud city could be regarded as barely achieving Su Qin's goal. As the city lord of the demon cloud city, the entire demon cloud city was like Su Qin's private property. In this case, who would dare to disturb Su Qin's quiet sign-in? Next, Su Qin came to the great hall that symbolized the city lord. This great hall was located in the center of the entire demon cloud city. It was the absolute core of the demon cloud city. With this great hall, the successive city lords knew the demon cloud city like the back of their hands. Su Qin just glanced at it, and knew that this great hall was faintly connected to the array of the entire demon cloud city. I'll leave everything else to you. Su Qin glanced at Mohim behind him, and ordered. Although Su Qin did not refuse to become the city lord of the demon cloud city, he was too lazy to care about other trivial matters of the demon cloud city, so he directly handed them over to Mohim. Mohim had a wisp of divine sense planted by Su Qin. Life and death were only in Su Qin's hands, so he did not dare to betray Su Qin. Mohim grew up in the Demon Cloud City. Although he was imprisoned most of the time, his understanding of the Demon Cloud City was obviously far above Su Qin's. Letting Mohim replace Su Qin in managing the Demon Cloud City was the best choice. Everything is done. It's time to sign in. Su Qin walked along the Great Hall and kept going deeper. After a while, a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of Su Qin's eyes. An ancient tree that was at least 1,000 meters tall stood there quietly. The ancient tree swayed, covering the sky and the sun. Endless demonic energy gathered, emitting waves that made one's heart palpitate. This is a branch from the ancient demon tree in the depths of the world? The moment Su Qin saw the ancient tree, he released his divine sense and scanned his surroundings. Before coming to the Demon Cloud City, Su Qin heard that there was a branch of the ancient demon tree in the depths of the world in the Demon Cloud City. According to Mohim, the ancient demon tree was the oldest thing in the cave world, supporting the entire cave world. Even the demon gods lived on the ancient demon tree. Just a branch is already so huge. If it was the real ancient demon tree, how glorious would it be? Su Qin raised his head and looked at the ancient tree that was 1,000 meters above the ground, his thoughts fluctuating. Originally, when Su Qin heard Mohim say that the ancient demon tree in the depths of the cave world was supporting the entire cave world, he didn't believe it and thought that it was just a rumor. After all, even in the human world, there were many myths and legends that were made up by people. But now, after seeing this ancient tree, Su Qin realized that the ancient demon tree in the depths of the world might be real. It's just a branch, but it can gather so much demonic energy. If it was the real ancient demon tree, the demonic energy it would gather would be like a mountain or a sea. No wonder even the demon gods are willing to live on the ancient demon tree, because the benefits are too great. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. Although Su Qin didn't know what level of powerhouse the demon gods were, they were definitely far beyond the legend realm. However, if the legend is true, the ancient demon tree supporting the entire cave world, I'm afraid its existence is almost the same as the world. After such a long time of accumulation, how much Tao accumulation is left on it? Su Qin's eyes suddenly became hot. Forget it. If there's a chance in the future, I can go and take a look, but now. Su Qin shook his head slightly. No matter how confident Su Qin was, he didn't think that he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the demon gods at this moment. Even just by relying on Mohim's words, Su Qin knew that the ancient demon tree was definitely a taboo for the demon gods in the depths of the world. Any demon who dared to approach the ancient demon tree would be killed without mercy. Although I can't sign in front of the real ancient demon tree, its branch shouldn't be too bad. Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly, and he once again used his divine sense to scan the ancient tree not far away, and then used the celestial observation technique and the eye of truth to confirm that there was no danger before slowly approaching. System, sign in! Su Qin stopped and said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Received Demon God's Blade. Demon God's Blade? Su Qin's face lit up with joy. Although he didn't know how powerful this Demon God's Blade was, since it was related to the Demon God, it definitely wasn't simple. At least, it was much stronger than the thousands of demon origin fruits he had obtained over the years. Thinking of this, Su Qin's mind quickly merged into the system space and quickly found the Demon God's Blade in a corner. The Demon God's Blade wasn't an ordinary weapon. It was a strange long blade shaped like a sickle and curved like a full moon. The Demon God's Blade was pitch black, and the surface of the blade was incomparably deep, like a black hole that could devour everything. Even Su Qin's mind was slightly shaken the moment he saw it. If Su Qin's divine sense hadn't been stabilized by the moon-forging divine sense, I'm afraid it wouldn't be just a slight shock at this moment. This is a demonic blade! Su Qin's mind quickly calmed down, like an eternal ice heart, without any ripples. Buzz! Su Qin's mind moved, and the Demon God's Blade left the system space and appeared in Su Qin's hand. Without the suppression of the system space, the Demon God's Blade suddenly began to rise, and a trace of terrifying fluctuations filled the void. This saber is alive? Su Qin held the hilt of the demon god's blade with his right hand and muttered to himself. The demon god's blade wasn't like other weapons. It seemed to be slowly breathing, and endless demonic energy was constantly pouring into the blade. Not bad. Su Qin gently clenched his right hand with a satisfied expression. So far, among the many weapons Su Qin has obtained, only the 9 Yao Bao can compete with this demon god's blade. It's just that the 9 Yao Bao is a pure spiritual weapon, while the demon god's blade exists in reality. Although the two are both weapons, they are two completely different categories. In the future, I don't need to fight with my bare hands. Su Qin nodded slightly, playing with the demon god's blade, and thought in his heart. If it was other demons, even a powerful demon king like the demon Cloud City Lord, they would have to be careful in the face of the demon god's blade, for fear of being affected by it. After all, this is a demonic blade, which can lead the mind of creatures to fall into the abyss. Even a demon king is no exception. But in Su Qin's view, it's just SOSO. No matter how strong the demon god's blade is, it's not stronger than the system. Since the system has obtained this demon god's blade, it has completely recognized Su Qin as its master, so there's no need to worry about anything. Let's try the power of this demon god's blade. After playing with the demon god's blade for a while, Su Qin's heart moved, he held the hilt, and gently slashed down. Chapter 193. Tear. An incomparably bright light flashed from the dark blade. Su Qin raised his right hand and blocked the pitch-black blade light. Suddenly, a slight wound appeared on Su Qin's skin. In addition, an aura that seemed to come from the abyss spread from the wound, trying to spread to Su Qin's whole body. Just by relying on the sharpness of the blade itself, it has such power? Su Qin's mind moved, his thoughts fluctuating. When Su Qin held the demon god's blade just now, he didn't use any power. He just relied on the sharpness of the demon god's blade. But the result shocked Su Qin. Su Qin's body at this moment is not comparable to a divine weapon, but it is not much worse. But even so, it was still easily broken by the demon god's blade. One can imagine its power. Although this wound was not worth mentioning for Su Qin, the slash just now did not display the true power of the demon god's blade. In addition to its sharpness, the most terrifying thing about this demon blade is the aura of the abyss. Su Qin felt the aura coming from the wound and thought in his heart. This aura of the abyss was all-pervasive, like a maggot. If it weren't for Su Qin's strong body suppressing this aura, the consequences would be unimaginable. Simply put, if the demon Cloud City Lord was cut by the demon god's blade, even if it was only a slight wound, the aura of the abyss would spread wildly, and within a few hours, the demon Cloud City Lord would die miserably. Although the aura of the abyss hell that was everywhere like maggots in one's bones was not a lethal poison, it was more than a few times stronger than a lethal poison. Not bad. After Su Qin roughly judged the power of the demon god's blade, he operated his divine ability flesh regeneration, and the wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although the demon god's blade was terrifying, how many cards did Su Qin have in his hands? How could he be stumped by a mere weapon? However, this demon god's blade gives me a feeling that it is not so simple. It should have other uses? Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look on his face. Thinking of this, Su Qin casually waved the demon god's blade and threw it into the system space. Although the demon god's blade can improve Su Qin's fighting ability, at least when he encounters a demon king like the demon Cloud City Lord in the future, Su Qin only needs to slash once. But in any case, whether it was the demon god's blade or the 9 luminaries' bow, after all, they were external objects. In order to become truly powerful, one had to rely on oneself. Next, I will focus on entering the 8th heavenly layer. Su Qin sat cross-legged, and the devil Buddha golden body slowly circulated. Large amounts of demonic chi poured into his body, continuously transforming it. No matter if it was Su Qin's original body or his incarnation, they all shared the same realm. As long as one of them broke through to the 8th heavenly layer, the other would naturally step into the 8th heavenly layer. Just as Su Qin was slowly cultivating, Mohim quickly walked into the City Lord's hall. Master. When Mohim saw that the City Lord's hall was empty, he did not panic. Instead, he said respectfully. After a while, a calm voice suddenly sounded in Mohim's ears. Go inside. Yes. When Mohim heard this, he did not doubt him and immediately began to walk towards the depths of the hall. Soon after, Mohim saw Su Qin sitting cross-legged under the ancient tree. Su Qin was sitting there quietly, but the whole ancient tree swayed with Su Qin's breathing. Demonic chi filled the sky. Even Mohim, who was not even a demon king, could realize the horror of it. A wisp of aura emitted by Su Qin could suppress a demon king outside. Master is getting more and more terrifying. Mohim immediately lowered his head, not daring to look directly at Su Qin. Have the matters of the Demon Cloud City been dealt with? Su Qin slowly opened his eyes and looked at Mohim. Although Su Qin was the new city lord of the Demon Cloud City, in fact, Su Qin was too lazy to take care of those trivial matters. Basically, he left them to Mohim. Master, it has been dealt with. Mohim replied immediately. Oh? No one is making trouble? Su Qin asked casually. Making trouble? Mohim smiled bitterly. Master is powerful. How could anyone dare to make trouble? Say it, what are you looking for me for? Su Qin asked faintly. Mohim specifically looked for him, certainly not just to talk about the Demon Cloud City. Master, I've discovered something. The Demon Cloud City Lord has a great relationship with the Cathode City Lord. When Mohim said this, her pretty face became extremely dignified. Master has taken over the Demon Cloud City. The Demon Cloud City Lord will probably not let it go. He will definitely invite the Cathode City Lord. Even now, Mohim didn't know that the Demon Cloud City Lord had died under Su Qin's sword light. Cathode City Lord? Su Qin's expression remained unchanged. Master, the Cathode City Lord is one of the strongest powerhouses in the vicinity. Mohim was full of worry. The Cathode City Lord's aura was monstrous. Compared with the Cathode City Lord, the previous Demon Cloud City Lord was as weak as a baby. Is the Cathode City Lord very strong? Su Qin asked casually. After he obtained the Demon God's Blade, Su Qin's fighting ability has greatly improved. As long as it's not a 9th heavenly layer demon king, or an earth immortal, Su Qin doesn't care too much. Even if Su Qin condenses the miniature domain, with all kinds of trump cards, even if it's a 9th heavenly layer demon king, Su Qin can ignore Su Qin. Very powerful. It is said that the Cathode City Lord was a high-level demon king as early as 200 years ago. Now, even if he is not a real peak demon king, I'm afraid he is not far away. Mohim said in a deep voice. Oh? I see. Su Qin said slowly without raising his eyes. A high-level demon king is equivalent to a 6th heavenly layer demon king. As for a peak demon king, it's equivalent to a 7th heavenly layer demon king. The strength of the Cathode City Lord is close to a peak demon king. It is indeed far beyond the Demon Cloud City Lord. No wonder he can shake the entire area. But in front of Su Qin, it's a joke. Master. Mohim's face was still full of worry. In her opinion, Su Qin should be from another large region. He doesn't know the terror of the Cathode City Lord. If the Cathode City Lord really comes, who in the Demon Cloud City would dare to stop him? Master. Let's leave the Demon Cloud City. Mohim thought for a long time and said, although the Cathode City Lord is powerful, if Su Qin leaves the Demon Cloud City with her, the Cathode City Lord will have no way to stop him. Is it possible that the Cathode City Lord is willing to spend a lot of time searching for Su Qin? Leave? Su Qin shook his head. He finally found such a good place to sign in, how could he leave? Don't worry, if the Cathode City Lord really dares to come, I will kill him. Su Qin said casually, as if the Cathode City Lord, who Mohim was afraid of, was just a cat or dog on the road. Chapter 194. When Su Qin attacked the Demon Cloud City, he didn't hide it in the slightest. He crushed the entire Demon Cloud City with one palm, and then forced the city lord to flee like a stray dog. There was no news about him until now, and no one knew whether he was dead or alive. This scene was witnessed by countless demons in the Demon Cloud City. Therefore, the news that the Demon Cloud City had a new city lord was not concealed, but quickly spread in all directions. Cathode City. In the main hall, there were more than a dozen figures sitting upright. Who is the Demon King who attacked the Demon Cloud City? Why have I never heard of such a powerhouse? A demon sitting on the right with a cold face said. His aura was deep, as obscure as the abyss. He turned out to be a powerful demon not weaker than the Demon Cloud City Lord. I don't know. However, the Demon Cloud City is full of arrays. In this range, the strength of the Demon Cloud City Lord is almost close to that of a high-level Demon King. The other party can sweep the entire Demon Cloud City like this. I'm afraid he's a real high-level Demon King. Another demon said calmly. High-level Demon King? I haven't heard of it. Yes, we know all the high-level Demon Kings within 1,000,000 miles. How did such a person suddenly appear? The rest of the demons looked at each other, full of puzzlement. One must know that even in the cave world, high-level Demon Kings were extremely rare, and it was impossible for one to appear casually. Every high-level Devil King could be traced, and their growth path was more or less clear. Could it be, is he from another major region? A demon whispered. Other major regions? The faces of the rest of the demons changed slightly. Indeed. This was the only possibility that could explain the sudden appearance of a high-level Demon King. City Lord, what should we do now? At this time, the cold demon who spoke first looked at the Cathode City Lord sitting high above. As soon as these words came out, many demons who were talking suddenly quieted down, and they also looked at the Cathode City Lord. The Cathode City Lord was wearing a robe, and his aura was restrained. If it weren't for the dark demonic light in his eyes, I'm afraid no one would think of him as the Cathode City Lord. The Demon Cloud City Lord promised me that he would offer me a purine body. The Cathode City Lord's voice was hoarse, like iron pieces rubbing against each other. I have been waiting for 20 years, and I can't wait to devour that wisp of purine energy. As a result, the Demon Cloud City has a new City Lord. The Cathode City Lord's words faintly revealed his dissatisfaction. The demonic arts he cultivated were too extreme and required purine energy to make up for it. Now, the Cathode City Lord only needed one purine body to gather 99 purine bodies and condense 99 strands of purine chi. Then, he would perfect his demonic arts in one fell swoop and completely enter the next realm. But what the Cathode City Lord didn't expect was that the last purine body would have an accident. I don't care who is the City Lord of Demon Cloud City. The Cathode City Lord slowly stood up, walked out of the hall, and looked up at the gray sky. But the purine body must be handed over. When the Cathode City Lord said this, he turned around and looked at the Demon Kings. Come with me to the Demon Cloud City. As soon as the Cathode City Lord finished speaking, the faces of the Demon Kings changed slightly. Although the Cathode City Lord didn't say what he was going to do in the Demon Cloud City, it was obvious that he wanted to force the new Demon Cloud City Lord to hand over the purine body. City Lord, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to do this. A Demon King braced himself and said, After all, the current Demon Cloud City Lord is likely to be a high-level Demon King. If it was the previous Demon Cloud City Lord, it would be fine to force them, but the current Demon Cloud City Lord is powerful. If they continue to force them, they might annoy the other party. The Cathode City Lord wasn't afraid, but what about them? Don't worry. A sneer appeared on the Cathode City Lord's face. My demonic arts are almost at great accomplishment, and it's not like I haven't killed a high-level Demon King. When the rest of the Demon Kings heard this, they suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. They quickly got up and stood behind the Cathode City Lord, trembling with fear. At the same time, under Chang'an City, in the underground majestic hall, Su Qin sat cross-legged, his aura was flowing, and the Millennium Bodhi heart was floating, blooming with a dazzling brilliance. It's about time. Su Qin opened his eyes leisurely. His eyes were calm as he whispered to himself. After nearly 2 years of hard work, with the help of the Millennium Bodhi Heart, Su Qin was only one step away from being able to condense the miniature domain. Once I condense the miniature domain, I can quickly break through to the 8th heavenly layer and the 9th heavenly layer, and spend more time on the shackles of Great Arhat. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he silently thought in his heart. For Su Qin, whether it was condensing the miniature domain, or the bottleneck of the 8th heavenly layer or the 9th heavenly layer, it was nothing. The only thing that Su Qin valued was the shackles of the Great Arhat realm. Let's get started. Su Qin slowly closed his eyes, and his aura began to fluctuate again. East Palace. Ruan Qing stood in front of the right spring square, guiding the family Su's martial arts cultivation. Since Ruan Qing agreed to serve Su Qin, she basically never left the imperial palace. She has been guarding Chang'an City for Su Qin. Master hasn't summoned me for several months. Ruan Qing walked out of the East Palace, thinking. In the beginning, Su Qin would occasionally appear in the imperial palace, but in recent months, Ruan Qing did not feel a trace of Su Qin's aura at all. If it weren't for Ruan Qing being able to detect that the divine sense planted by Su Qin still existed in her heart, she would have thought that something had happened to Su Qin. Just as Ruan Qing was about to return to the East Palace, suddenly, the primordial qi of the entire Chang'an City suddenly shook. Endless primordial qi of heaven and earth from all directions, up and down, madly gathered toward Chang'an City. 10 miles. 20 miles. 30 miles. 50 miles. 100 miles. The primordial qi of heaven and earth covered far more than 100 miles. In an instant, with Chang'an City as the center, the primordial qi within a radius of several hundred miles was shaking, as if a storm had occurred. This is... Ruan Qing looked at this scene, dumbfounded, as if she had seen a ghost. As a martial arts legend, Ruan Qing naturally knew what it meant to shake the primordial qi of heaven and earth within a radius of several hundred miles. Master, it's Master's doing! Ruan Qing immediately reacted, almost as if she had witnessed a myth. One must know that a martial arts legend like Ruan Qing could control the power of heaven and earth, but the range of the power of heaven and earth was only about 10 miles. But now, the shaking of the primordial qi of heaven and earth had spread to several hundred miles. What is Master's strength? How can he control the power of heaven and earth in such a range? Ruan Qing was so shocked that she could barely hide it. Under the shaking range of the power of heaven and earth, Ruan Qing only felt that her connection with heaven and earth had been completely cut off. At this moment, Ruan Qing, except for her body, divine will, and true essence, which were at the level of a martial arts legend, almost instantly fell to the level of a rank 9 martial artist. And just under Ruan Qing's incredulous gaze, the primordial qi shaking that had spread to several hundred miles suddenly began to shrink. In just a moment, everything returned to normal. Under Chang'an City, in the majestic underground palace, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. Domain. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. It's finally done! Chapter 195. In the majestic hall, Su Qin was overjoyed. 2 years, although it's a bit long, but condensing the micro-domain is not a waste of time. Su Qin nodded slightly and thought to himself. If the sect masters of the major overseas sects knew what Su Qin was thinking, their eyes would probably turn red with jealousy. For them, even if it took 80 or 100 years to condense the micro-domain, they would still be ecstatic and would want to invite overseas legends to celebrate. As for the 2 years, these sect masters probably wouldn't even think about it, because it was too incredible. What could he do in 2 years? He could easily go into seclusion for more than 2 years. Not to mention condensing the microdomain, even if he just sorted out his true essence a little, 2 years would pass. Condense. Su Qin's mind moved. Suddenly an invisible force, with him as the center, spread out to a radius of 100 feet. This 100 feet radius is my domain. Within it, any power is under my control. Su Qin carefully felt the subtleties of the domain, a thoughtful look on his face. There was an essential difference between a domain and the power of heaven and earth. For example, if two legends fought, no matter where and when, they could control the power of heaven and earth as a means to suppress each other. After all, the power of heaven and earth came from heaven and earth. As long as one was a legend, they could control it. At most the difference was the size of the domain. But a domain was different. If a legend was in the domain, even if he was at the peak of the 5th or 6th level, he would be shocked to find that he couldn't control the power of heaven and earth at all, as if he had fallen from the legend realm. To put it simply, within the domain, Su Qin was the only master. As long as Su Qin didn't want to, no legend could borrow a trace of power from his domain. Not bad, not bad. No wonder they say that a legend who has condensed a domain and a legend who hasn't condensed a domain are on a completely different level. Su Qin looked amazed. Although Su Qin was still at the 7th level. But with the support of the domain, even if he was besieged by dozens of legends of the same level, he was fearless. If the besieging legends of the same level fell into his domain, their life and death would be under Su Qin's control. Of course, no 7th heavenly layer legend would be so stupid as to barge into a domain. After all, Su Qin's domain had just been formed, and it only covered a radius of 1,000 feet. For an ordinary person, a range of 100 feet might be very large, but in the eyes of a legend, it was just a matter of a thought. The myth warriors were not fools. It was impossible for them to rush forward when they knew that they were no match for the enemy. What a pity! If only the range of the domain was a little bigger. A hint of regret appeared on Su Qin's face. Compared to Su Qin's world energy that spanned 100 miles, the domain of 100 Zhan had shrunk significantly. However, this thought only flashed through Su Qin's mind. Compared to an impenetrable domain, the so-called power of heaven and earth was a joke. It was like the difference between 10 tails of cotton and 1 tail of gold. It's said that as long as one steps into the earth immortal realm, the micro-domain will transform into a great domain, instantly enveloping a radius of several hundred miles. Su Qin was lost in thought. The domain that he had condensed now, to be precise, was just a micro-domain. It could even be said that it was the prototype of a domain. But even so, it had such great power. One could imagine how earth-shattering the great domain of the earth immortal great Arhat would be. Next, Su Qin continued to experience the various magical effects of the micro-domain, and finally, his mind slowly calmed down. That's right. Let's see if the demon god's blade that I obtained in the cave world can break through the domain. Su Qin suddenly thought. The demon god's blade was the sharpest weapon among all the weapons that Su Qin had ever seen. It was terrifying to the extreme. Even Su Qin couldn't block the demon god's blade with just the strength of his body. Of course, Su Qin couldn't block it, but the demon god's blade couldn't do anything to Su Qin. Because with Su Qin's strength, he wouldn't let the demon god's blade touch him at all. Besides, Su Qin also has the ability to regenerate flesh and blood. Unless the demon god's blade can completely annihilate Su Qin in an instant, otherwise, Su Qin is immortal and can recover indefinitely. Buzz! A strange long blade that was shaped like a sickle and curved like a full moon appeared in Su Qin's hand. In an instant, a deep aura filled the air, making people feel as if they were in the abyss of hell. Not bad. Su Qin held the hilt and waved it casually. Even if Su Qin didn't use any power, when he waved the demon god's blade, he could feel the extremely sharp blade aura filling the air, almost piercing through the air. Domain. Su Qin's mind moved, and the misty power of the domain wrapped around the demon god's blade. Clang! The demon god's blade let out a blade cry, and Su Qin waved it gently, and a dark and deep blade light appeared, breaking through the power of the domain, and finally slowly dissipating. The demon god's blade can break through the domain, but the domain can also wear down the demon god's blade. Su Qin touched his chin and judged in his heart. It had to be said that the demon god's blade was very terrifying, it could even break through the invisible and intangible domain. It must be known that even 7th or 8th heavenly layer gods and demons can't do anything to the domain without condensing a miniature domain, but since the demon god's blade can cut through the power of the domain, it can be seen how sharp it is. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and he put the demon god's blade back into the system space. The system space was unique. As long as Su Qin in the cave world put the treasures he obtained from signing in into the system space, Su Qin in Chang'an City would be able to take out the demon god's blade from the system space. And vice versa. The domain has just been formed, it needs to be stabilized. Su Qin slowly closed his eyes again and fell into cultivation again. Su Qin spent 2 years to condense the miniature domain. Naturally, he planned to completely stabilize the domain before considering other things. And after Su Qin continued his seclusion, Yuan Qing outside the East Palace was inexplicably shocked. Just now, the heaven and earth essence chi within a radius of hundreds of miles shook together. If Yuan Qing hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she would never have believed it. Even for a mythical warrior, the limit of control of the heaven and earth essence chi is 100 miles. As for hundreds of miles, I'm afraid that only the real peak mythical warriors can reach it. Master is too strong. Yuan Qing sighed softly, her face full of awe. In the past year or so, Su Qin didn't stop Yuan Qing from cultivating. On the contrary, in the first year, he often guided Yuan Qing. And now, with the help of the Eastern Palace's cultivation environment, which was not inferior to overseas, coupled with the recovery of the vitality, and Su Qin's occasional guidance, Yuan Qing's cultivation had improved again, reaching the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer. Yuan Qing even had a faint illusion that if he was given a few decades or 100 years, he was confident that he could break through the shackles and enter the 4th heaven. It should be known that even overseas, a 4th heaven mythical warrior was enough to serve as an elder protector of the high sects, and could be said to be an expert second only to the sect master and the vice sect master. Yuan Qing originally thought that he had no hope of entering this level in his lifetime, but in less than 2 years in Chang'an City, he saw hope. The recovery of the vitality tide is becoming more and more obvious. Yuan Qing looked at the sky and muttered to himself. Although a large part of the reason why he could improve so quickly was because of Su Qin's guidance, the influence of the environment was also not small. It's been almost 2 years. The recovery of the vitality tide is much faster than I thought. The sect masters of the high sects overseas should have noticed it by now, right? A trace of worry appeared on Yuan Qing's face. Even if the sect masters of the high sects did not believe in the existence of the land of great battles at first, and thought that overseas would continue to prosper, as time passed and the vitality tide became more and more intense, with the ability of those sect masters, they must have realized something. However, with master's strength, even in the face of the high sects with thousands of years of inheritance, he should be qualified to negotiate. Yuan Qing guessed in his heart. Just as Su Qin was in seclusion, and the world was gradually falling into peace, a man in a blood-red robe appeared out of thin air, walking in the air. Wherever he passed, his aura shrouded and suppressed all things. All the martial artists were terrified. Under the aura of the man in the blood-red robe, they did not even dare to raise their heads and knelt down one after another, as if welcoming a supreme monarch. It was only after the man in the blood-red robe had completely left that the martial artists reluctantly straightened their backs. Who is he? Why is his aura so terrifying? Riding the wind, could it be that he is a martial arts legend? Countless martial artists trembled in their hearts and kept talking. Even if the vitality has recovered and cultivation has become easier, the existence of a martial arts legend is still unattainable. Since the imperial teacher of the Mengyuan Empire was killed by Su Qin outside Chang'an City, no new martial arts legend has been born in the world. But now, this man in a blood-red robe set off a huge wave in everyone's heart. At this moment, another news came out. Isn't he the Blood Kill Gates legend from 200 years ago? As soon as this news came out, the entire martial arts world was in an uproar. The legend of the Blood Kill Gate had crossed the sea more than 200 years ago and disappeared. Not only the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate, but all the legends who crossed the sea have never returned. The world is going to be in chaos again, an old warrior thought sorrowfully. And at this moment, the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate in a blood-red robe came outside the headquarters of the Blood-Kill Gate. No one? The legend of the Blood-Kill Gate frowned. His terrifying divine sense covered inch by inch and finally found a disciple hiding nearby. Ancestor! Ancestor, you are finally back! The Blood-Kill Gate disciple immediately burst into tears. Every disciple of the Blood-Kill Gate has to kneel and worship the portrait of the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate. Therefore, this disciple recognized the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate at first sight. What the hell happened? The legend of the Blood-Kill Gate frowned. Ancestor, our Blood-Kill Gate was forced by the legend of the Empire of Tang to disperse our disciples. The Blood-Kill Gate disciple hurriedly told what had happened over the years. The Empire of Tang? A legend? Not bad. I didn't expect another legend to be born in the 200 years I was gone. The legend of the Blood-Kill Gate disciple nodded slightly, as if he was appreciating the younger generation. However, since you dared to provoke my Blood-Kill Gate, you are courting death. A strong murderous intent flashed in the depths of the legend of the Blood-Kill Gate disciple's eyes. Ancestor, the legend of the Empire of Tang once killed 3 of our peak Grade 1 experts from thousands of miles away. Ancestor, you have to avenge us, the Blood-Kill Gate disciple said again. What? Thousands of miles away? The legend of the Blood-Kill Gate disciple's calm expression finally changed. Chapter 196. A legend was high up in the air, riding the wind like an immortal. However, no matter how similar it was just similar, not a real immortal. A legend was also a human, and they had their own limits. For example, a third heavenly layer legend like the Patriarch of Blood-Kill, even if he went all out, he could only be 10 or 20 miles away. As for the martial arts legend in Chang'an City, it was simply inconceivable and unheard of for him to attack from thousands of miles away. Even in the endless sea where martial arts flourished, Patriarch Blood-Kill had never heard of such an incredible scene. A bunch of nonsense! The Patriarch of Blood-Kill's expression was uncertain, and finally he sneered. Did you see that scene with your own eyes? When the Patriarch of Blood-Kill said this, the Blood-Kill Gate disciple was slightly stunned and immediately replied. Patriarch, I also heard that, humph. I understand. The Patriarch of Blood-Kill coldly snorted. Your level is too low, you don't know the means of a legend. The Patriarch of Blood-Kill's expression returned to normal, and he instantly figured everything out. How could the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill sect not know of such a thing? For example, when 2 legends fought, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked, and the aftermath spread dozens of miles away. If this scene was seen by ordinary people, they would definitely think that it was a fight between gods and immortals, and then the more they talked about it, the more ridiculous it became. But in fact, in the eyes of a legend like the Patriarch of Blood-Kill, it was just a fight between powerhouses of the same level. It was nothing at all. According to the Blood-Kill Gate disciple, the legend of Chang'an City may have some ability, but the means to attack from thousands of miles away were far inferior. Don't worry, I will definitely take revenge for the Blood-Kill Gate, but now is not the time. I have to wait for the permission of those people. The Patriarch of Blood-Kill pondered for a while and said lightly. Those people? The Blood-Kill Gate disciple's face suddenly turned pale. In his eyes, the Patriarch of Blood-Kill was already a godlike figure, but now, the Patriarch of Blood-Kill actually called them those people. There's no harm in telling you. Patriarch Blood-Kill glanced at the disciples of the Blood-Kill Gate and casually said, This time, I didn't return to this continent alone. I came back with several distinguished characters. As the Patriarch Blood-Kill spoke to hear, he paused for a moment before continuing. Those several great characters all have venerated statuses. If you encounter them, you absolutely cannot overstep your boundaries. Otherwise, not only will you be annihilated, but I might also be implicated. Patriarch Blood-Kill warned. Yes. The blood-kill gate disciple's face was as pale as paper as he bowed his head and replied. The blood-kill gate's mythological ancestor had appeared. This news quickly spread throughout the world like lightning. Now that the Empire of Tang had unified all the countries, their power was unparalleled. The blood-kill gate was forced to dismiss their disciples in order to avoid the purge of the Empire of Tang. At this time, the appearance of the mythical ancestor of the blood-kill gate was tantamount to seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for the disciples of the blood-kill gate who were hiding everywhere like stray dogs. Why is the patriarch of the blood-kill gate back? I don't know. Did he come back because of the blood-kill gate? It's over. The return of the blood-kill gate has greatly boosted the prestige of the blood-kill gate. Our good days are coming to an end. Countless martial artists in Jianghu were worried. For a long time, the blood-kill gate had taken pleasure in provoking the countries in the world and driving a wedge between the Jianghu and Jianghu. The prosperity of the blood-kill gate meant that there would be more killings in the world. However, I don't know what the mythological ancestor of Chang'an City thinks about his return. Someone couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, all the martial artists were silent. 3-peat grade 1 of the blood-kill gate fell in the hands of the mythological expert of Chang'an City. In addition, the blood-kill gate was forced to dismiss their disciples because of this. How could the patriarch of the blood-kill gate ignore such grievances? Who do you think is stronger between the patriarch of the blood-kill gate and the mythological expert of Chang'an City? A martial artist asked with great interest. I think it should be the mythological expert of Chang'an City, right? After all, a few years ago, the imperial teacher of Mengyuan City was killed by the mythological expert of Chang'an City. The imperial teacher of Mengyuan City is just a legend. How can he be compared with the patriarch of the blood-kill gate? Yes, the patriarch of the blood-kill gate became a legend 200 years ago. Now that he has been abroad for 200 years, his strength must have improved a lot. The mythological expert of Chang'an City can kill the imperial teacher of Mengyuan City, but he may not be able to defeat the patriarch of the blood-kill gate. Countless martial artists talked quickly. In their view, Su Qin's strength was unfathomable, but the patriarch of the blood-kill gate was also not weak. Especially in the past 200 years, God knows how high the patriarch of the blood-kill gate had reached. In my opinion, the mythological expert of Chang'an City should not be the opponent of the patriarch of the blood-kill gate. An old martial artist made the final decision. Although Su Qin was able to suppress the world, the patriarch of the blood-kill gate was invincible 200 years ago. In the absence of a head-on fight between the two, everyone felt that the patriarch of the blood-kill gate was stronger. After all, when it comes to martial arts cultivation, one side has 200 years more than the other. Who is stronger and who is weaker is obvious at a glance. Just as the world was talking about it. Chang'an City. Inside the imperial palace. It is indeed the patriarch of the blood-kill gate. The Emperor of Tang's expression was dignified as he looked at the information in his hand and said in a deep voice. Now that the Empire of Tang had unified the world, as early as the first appearance of the patriarch of the blood-kill gate, the relevant information was passed to the Emperor of Tang. However, at that time, the Emperor of Tang still had doubts in his heart. But as time passed, more and more information came, and the Emperor of Tang had no choice but to believe it. Your Majesty, what should we do now? A minister stood up, looked at the Emperor of Tang, and asked. The Emperor of Tang was silent for a while, and then said, I will mobilize the army and strengthen the patrol of Chang'an City. When the other ministers heard this, they looked at each other, opened their mouths, but did not continue to say anything. In fact, they could only do as the Emperor of Tang said. Otherwise, what else could they do? Could they take the initiative to find the patriarch of the blood-kill gate and take him down? Not to mention whether the Empire of Tang could take down the patriarch of the blood-kill gate. Who could be sure of the whereabouts of the patriarch of the blood-kill gate? A legend could ride the wind and travel tens of thousands of miles in a day. Maybe one day he was in the far west, and the next day he would be in the far north. After the end of the court meeting, the Emperor of Tang hurried to the East Palace. Mr. Ruan, hasn't the third brother contacted you yet? The Emperor of Tang found Wan Qing and asked. Although Wan Qing claimed to be Su Qing's servant, the Emperor of Tang did not dare to really treat a legend as a servant. Instead, he called him Mr. In the Empire of Tang, Mr. was an honorific, such as teacher. No. Wan Qing glanced at the Emperor of Tang and asked doubtfully, Do you have something to say to Master? For some reason, the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate from 200 years ago has returned. The Emperor of Tang roughly told him what he knew. It seems that the great sects overseas have begun to intervene. Wan Qing thought for a while and sighed softly. Then what should we do now? The Emperor of Tang did not know what the great sects meant, but he knew it was not a good thing. If it was just the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate alone, I could deal with him, but in addition to the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate, those great sects must have sent other disciples. Wan Qing shook his head. Now we can only wait for Master to come out, Wan Qing said helplessly. Almost at the same time, all kinds of incredible news spread all over the world. For example, someone once saw a woman in white flying in the ice field of the extreme north, like a fairy from the upper realm. Someone saw a man in blue with a sword on his back, hundreds of meters in one step, as if he was measuring the world. Someone also saw a Taoist standing above the clouds, indifferently overlooking all living beings, as if he was looking for something. For a time, the world was shaken. If the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate who appeared out of thin air at the beginning was just shocking, then the appearance of these suspected legends one after another made people panic. What the hell happened? Could it be that these people, like the Patriarch of the Blood-Kill Gate, returned from overseas? That's the only possibility, otherwise, it's rare for a legend to appear in an era. How could so many appear now? Many martial artists were frightened and uneasy. And at this moment, on a high mountain, there were several figures standing leisurely. Among these figures, there was a woman in white like a fairy, a man in blue with a sword on his back, and a Taoist in a Taoist robe, and so on. At this moment, because of the existence of these figures, the entire top of the mountain was faintly shrouded in an inexplicable aura. How's the investigation? The woman in white's voice was crisp and clear. She was the contemporary goddess of the Snow God Palace from overseas, named Bing Ling. This time, she came on the order of her master to determine whether this continent was the legendary land of the Great Battle. As for the others, they were also heaven's prides from overseas. Although the current vitality of this continent is still far inferior to our sex overseas, its growth rate is far faster than overseas. The man in blue with a sword on his back paused for a while and continued. According to the current trend, in 100 years at most, the vitality of this place will be comparable to overseas, and in 200 years, it will completely surpass overseas. As soon as these words came out, everyone's face changed. Then what are we waiting for? Why don't we join forces and take over the Empire of Tang, completely control this continent, and then welcome our sex? A rough man said loudly. When the people on the scene arrived, they knew that this continent was ruled by a country called the Empire of Tang. Take over the Empire of Tang? The Taoist in a Taoist robe frowned slightly. But I heard that there seems to be a legend in Chang'an City of the Empire of Tang, and his strength is not weak, not weak? The rough man grinned and said, Compared to overseas, this place is not even considered immortal. Any legend can be invincible for an era. But in front of the disciples of our sects, it is nothing. Any one of us can sweep this place. The rough man's tone was full of pride. That's right. The man in blue with a sword on his back nodded slightly. As disciples of the sects, whether it is cultivation methods, secret skills, or heritage, how can this place be compared to the mortals? That's good. Bing Ling, the contemporary goddess of the Snow God Palace, nodded slightly. In that case, let's go to Chang'an City. If that legend is sensible and takes the initiative to lower his head, we can spare his life. If not, we can kill him directly. Under Chang'an City, in the majestic hall, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. The domain is finally almost stable. Su Qin's face flashed with satisfaction. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.